Welcome to the Channel Science documentary for sleep. I'm glad you're here, exactly as you are. You don't need to stay focused, and you don't need to remember anything that follows. You can listen, or let the sound pass by, or drift somewhere in between. As you settle, you might notice your breathing moving a little more slowly, or your body feeling heavier, or lighter, or not noticing anything at all, which is just as fine. Tonight, we're exploring something gentle and real and vast, the most relaxing facts about plasma. Plasma is often described as a state of matter, but tonight it doesn't need to be a category or a definition. It can simply be a presence. It appears in quiet places and enormous ones in distant stars, in soft glowing clouds, in long curtains of aurora that hang in the sky, in faint rings around planets, in slow storms on the surface of the sun, and in the nearly empty spaces between galaxies. All of these things are real. They've been observed, measured, and described by scientists over many years, and you don't have to hold on to any of that. You might feel curious for a moment, or calm, or pleasantly blank. Your attention may come and go, and that's expected here. If at any point you feel like settling in more comfortably, you're welcome to do that or not. There's nothing you need to do, and nothing to keep up with. This is simply a quiet stream of true things about plasma, moving along at its own unhurried pace, keeping you company for a while. Plasma is often called the most common form of ordinary matter in the universe, not the most familiar, and not the most easily noticed, but the most widespread. Astronomers describe vast regions of space where matter is so warm or so energized that electrons drift freely, no longer bound tightly to atoms. In those places, matter becomes plasma. You don't need to picture anything sharply. It can be enough to imagine that much of the universe is quietly glowing in ways that don't demand to be seen. Stars are made of plasma, slowly and steadily shining. Between stars, thin plasma drifts in long, almost empty stretches, so sparse that it hardly feels like anything at all, even when attention fades. This remains true. Most of what exists is in this gentle, charged state, moving without hurry, filling space without effort. Plasma behaves differently from solids, liquids, and gases, but not in a way that needs to be tracked. Its particles respond to electric and magnetic fields, which means plasma can form waves and filaments, arcs and curtains. Sometimes it organizes itself into long threads, sometimes into wide, glowing sheets. These structures can last for moments or for thousands of years, depending on where they are. In space, plasma often moves slowly, guided by invisible magnetic lines, curving and drifting like something alive but without intention. You don't need to remember the mechanisms. It's enough to know that plasma has a way of arranging itself softly, following quiet rules that don't require observation to continue working. Closer to home, plasma appears in places that are calm to watch, even if their origins are energetic. Auroras form when plasma from the sun interacts with Earth's magnetic field and upper atmosphere. High above the ground, charged particles spiral gently along magnetic paths and release light as they settle. The result is slow movement, curtains of green or red light folding and unfolding across the sky. People have watched these displays for centuries, often in silence. You may have seen images, or you may not have. Either way, the plasma doesn't mind. It keeps moving whether it's noticed or not, responding patiently to fields that have been there all along. The sun itself is a steady ocean of plasma. Its surface isn't solid in the usual sense, but a constantly shifting layer of hot, luminous matter. Plasma rises and falls there in slow convection, carrying energy outward. Dark sunspots appear where magnetic fields temporarily hold plasma in place, cooling it slightly, changing how it glows. Solar storms happen when tangled magnetic lines gently rearrange themselves, releasing energy in wide arcs that can stretch far into space. These events sound dramatic when named, but they unfold according to simple physical tendencies. Plasma follows paths of least resistance. Magnetic fields guide motion. Energy spreads out, even here in the heart of a star. Nothing is rushed. On Earth, plasma exists quietly in places we rarely think about. Lightning is a brief, bright channel of plasma, but most plasma around us is far more subtle. The upper atmosphere contains thin layers where gases are partially ionized by sunlight, forming a soft plasma that helps radio waves travel long distances. Fluorescent lights and neon signs contain plasma too, glowing steadily inside glass, turning electrical energy into color. These are controlled, gentle uses of plasma, designed to be stable and calm. You don't need to analyze how they work. You may simply notice that plasma doesn't always roar or explode. Often, it hums quietly, doing its work without drawing attention. Plasma has a natural tendency to smooth itself out over time. Small disturbances spread and fade. Uneven regions slowly balance. In space, plasma waves can travel enormous distances, carrying energy so gently that their passage is almost imperceptible. Scientists observe these waves using instruments, but the plasma itself doesn't announce them. They move through darkness and light alike, indifferent to whether anything is listening. If your thoughts drift while imagining this, that drifting mirrors the behavior of plasma itself, motion without urgency, change without demand. One of the more peaceful aspects of plasma is its connection to magnetic fields. Magnetic fields are invisible, steady structures that permeate space. Plasma responds to them naturally, spiraling and flowing along their lines. This creates motion that is curved rather than straight, cyclical rather than abrupt. In planetary magnetospheres, plasma forms vast protective bubbles, deflecting charged particles and softening their impact. Earth's magnetic field does this quietly every moment, shaping the plasma around our planet and guiding it gently away. You don't need to picture the geometry. You can simply know that there is a calm, unseen coordination happening all the time. In laboratories, scientists study plasma by creating small, stable versions of it. These plasmas are often contained in magnetic fields, hovering without touching solid walls. They glow faintly, shifting in color as conditions change. Even here, under observation, plasma behaves according to broad tendencies rather than sharp rules. It forms patterns that repeat, dissolve, and return. Nothing about this requires memorization. The details can blur. The overall feeling is one of continuous motion that never quite settles, yet never feels strained. Plasma also plays a role in the long story of the universe. After the Big Bang, the universe was once entirely plasma-hot, dense, and luminous everywhere. As it expanded and cooled, particles gradually combined into neutral atoms, allowing light to travel freely. That ancient plasma has faded, but its imprint remains in the background glow of the cosmos. This isn't something you need to hold in mind. It's simply a reminder that plasma has been present since the beginning, changing slowly as conditions allowed. Time, in this context, stretches far beyond human scales, becoming something soft and almost abstract. When people describe plasma as energetic, it doesn't mean restless. Energy can be steady. Energy can be distributed evenly across vast regions. In many cosmic environments, plasma exists at low densities, moving slowly, interacting gently with its surroundings. These plasmas can persist for millions of years with little change. They don't hurry toward an outcome. They simply remain, adjusting gradually to the quiet forces around them. If your awareness dips here, nothing is lost. The plasma continues regardless. Sometimes plasma is described as a medium that carries information because waves and fields move through it. But this information doesn't need to be read. It doesn't arrive as messages. It's more like a background conversation that never expects a response. Waves rise and fall, currents shift, patterns repeat. All of this happens whether anyone is paying attention or not. You're welcome to listen, or to let it pass by unnoticed, just as plasma does with so much of what moves through it. As this stream of facts continues, you might notice that the boundaries between ideas soften. Stars, auroras, laboratory glows, distant space, all of them involve the same state of matter, appearing under different conditions. Plasma doesn't insist on being one thing. It adapts, it responds, it fills the available space. You don't need to follow the connections. You can let them blur into a single sense of gentle, luminous motion, spread thinly across the universe and quietly present around you. And if your thoughts wander elsewhere now, that's completely in tune with the subject. Plasma drifts, it flows, it follows fields you can't see, it exists whether it's remembered or forgotten. These are real, measured facts, and they don't mind being half heard. They don't mind pauses, they don't mind sleep. They'll be here softly, either way. Plasma can be so thin that it almost isn't there at all. In the spaces between stars, astronomers measure plasma densities that are lower than anything we could create on Earth. Just a few particles in a volume the size of a room, sometimes even fewer. And yet, even at that extreme sparseness, plasma still behaves as plasma. Electric charges still respond to magnetic fields. Waves still pass through. Structures still form, slowly and gently, across distances so large they're difficult to hold in mind. You don't need to imagine the scale clearly. It's enough to know that emptiness, in the universe, is rarely completely empty. There is almost always a soft presence, quietly active, doing very little at any given moment. In these vast regions, plasma moves at a pace that makes human ideas of motion feel hurried. A change that takes thousands of years can still be considered gradual. A wave can travel for centuries and still be thought of as gentle. Nothing about this movement demands attention. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't build toward anything. It simply continues, shaped by forces that are steady and patient. If your thoughts slow here or thin out, that fits naturally with the subject. Plasma doesn't rush to fill silence. It's comfortable with long pauses. Plasma also has a relationship with light that is calm and predictable. When charged particles move or shift energy, they can emit light at very specific wavelengths. That's why plasma glows in particular colors: reds, blues, greens, depending on what particles are present and how energetic they are. Astronomers use these colors to learn about distant objects, but the plasma itself isn't trying to communicate. The light is simply a byproduct of motion and energy settling into balance. You don't need to remember which colors mean what. You can just notice that plasma often expresses itself softly, through light that drifts rather than flashes. Around planets like Jupiter and Saturn, plasma forms immense rotating structures. These giant planets have strong magnetic fields that trap plasma and guide it into wide, spinning disks. The plasma moves along invisible paths, circling the planet again and again, sometimes for years. Moons passing through these regions can add material, releasing gases that become ionized and join the flow. It's a slow exchange, happening far from human timelines. Nothing dramatic needs to occur for plasma to keep moving this way. It's sustained by steady rotation and stable fields, repeating the same patterns quietly. Some plasma environments are surprisingly calm even when they contain great amounts of energy. In fusion experiments on Earth, Scientists work to create plasmas hot enough for atomic nuclei to combine. The temperatures are extreme, but the goal is stability, not violence. The plasma is carefully shaped and held in place by magnetic fields, hovering without touching anything solid. For brief moments, it can remain smooth and contained, glowing evenly. These moments are studied closely, but the plasma itself doesn't resist or cooperate. It follows physical tendencies, nothing more. Even under intense conditions, it seeks balance. Plasma can also dampen motion in space. Interactions between plasma and magnetic fields can slow down charged particles, spreading their energy out over time. This creates regions where motion becomes smoother, less chaotic. Shocks in plasma, like those formed by solar wind meeting a planet's magnetic field, are often broad and gradual, not sharp. Energy is redistributed rather than abruptly stopped. If this sounds technical, it doesn't need to be. You can simply take from it the sense that plasma has ways of softening extremes, easing transitions from one state to another. In the long filaments between galaxies, plasma traces out the large-scale structure of the universe. These filaments are vast, stretching for millions of light years, connecting clusters of galaxies like faint threads. The plasma there is cold by cosmic standards and barely luminous, but it plays a role in shaping how matter gathers, gravity pulls, plasma responds, magnetic fields guide. The process is slow beyond intuition. If your awareness drifts here, that's perfectly aligned. These structures formed while countless generations of stars lived and died, unnoticed by anything that could reflect on them. Plasma doesn't have a fixed shape. It adapts continuously to its environment. In some places it forms smooth sheets, in others, twisting ropes. Sometimes it breaks into small-scale turbulence, sometimes it settles into large, coherent flows. None of these forms are permanent. They emerge, persist for a while, and then dissolve into something else. There's no need to track which form comes next. The sequence isn't important. What matters is the ongoing nature of change that never feels abrupt. On a smaller scale, plasma can exist in gentle equilibrium with solid matter. In plasma processing used in manufacturing, low-temperature plasmas interact delicately with surfaces, altering them atom by atom. These plasmas are carefully controlled, designed to be uniform and predictable. They don't burn or blast. They hover and touch lightly, guided by electric fields. It's another reminder that plasma isn't inherently violent or chaotic. Often, it's precise, quiet, and even-tempered. Plasma also has a way of carrying currents without resistance in some conditions. In space, large-scale electric currents can flow through plasma over enormous distances, closing on themselves in vast loops. These currents don't heat wires or cause sparks. They simply exist as part of the plasma's structure. Magnetic fields wrap around them, stabilizing the flow. You don't need to picture the loops clearly. You can think of them as slow circulations, energy moving in paths that repeat endlessly without wearing anything down. There is a softness to the idea that plasma responds rather than initiates. It doesn't decide where to go. It follows fields, gradients, and balances. When conditions change, plasma changes too, but not with resistance or hesitation. It adapts as much as needed and no more. If your own state is shifting while you listen, attention rising, falling, fading that mirrors plasma's way of being, nothing needs correcting. As these facts drift past, some may blur together. Space plasma and laboratory plasma, ancient plasma and everyday plasma. That blending is fine. They're expressions of the same underlying behavior, appearing wherever energy and charged particles coexist. Plasma doesn't insist on distinction. It allows overlap. It allows repetition. It allows long stretches where very little seems to happen at all. And if you're only catching fragments now, a word here, an image there that's more than enough, plasma itself often exists at the edge of detectability. Inferred rather than seen, it leaves traces, subtle signs, faint glows. It doesn't require full attention to be real. It doesn't mind being partially noticed. It continues quietly, whether observed closely, loosely, or not at all. Plasma has a way of carrying heat without needing contact. In space, where there's almost nothing to touch, plasma still transfers energy through waves and gentle particle motion. This movement doesn't feel like warmth in the human sense. It's more like a quiet redistribution, energy slowly finding places where it can rest more evenly. Astronomers observe this in galaxy clusters, where hot plasma fills the space between galaxies, glowing faintly in X-rays. The glow isn't urgent, it doesn't flicker or pulse dramatically. It's steady, the kind of light that feels as though it has always been there and doesn't mind continuing. In these clusters, plasma can remain suspended for billions of years. Gravity holds it loosely, magnetic fields shape it gently, and time stretches far beyond anything familiar. The plasma doesn't collapse quickly, and it doesn't disperse completely. It stays in a long balance, slowly cooling, slowly shifting. If you imagine this at all, you might imagine something like fog that never quite settles and never quite clears. And if that image fades, that's fine too. The plasma doesn't rely on being pictured accurately. It simply exists in that long, patient state. Plasma often supports waves that move without transporting matter very far. These waves are oscillations, small motions that pass through while particles mostly stay where they are. In the sun's atmosphere, for example, plasma waves ripple outward, carrying energy from the surface into the outer layers. They move quietly, sometimes damped before they can travel very far. Scientists study them carefully, but the waves themselves are indifferent to being understood. They rise, pass, and fade, leaving the plasma only slightly changed. It's okay if this detail feels distant or abstract. The feeling of gentle motion without displacement is enough. There are places where plasma and dust mix together, forming something called dusty plasma. In these environments, tiny solid grains become charged and interact with surrounding plasma. This happens in planetary rings, comet tails, and even in some laboratory experiments. The result can be slow, graceful motion as dust particles arrange themselves into patterns, sometimes forming lattice-like structures. It's a reminder that plasma doesn't exclude solidity. It can coexist with it, shaping and being shaped in return. Nothing needs to dominate. Everything responds. In comet tails, plasma streams away from the sun, guided by the solar wind's magnetic field. This tail always points away from the sun, regardless of the comet's direction of travel. The plasma moves steadily, forming a long, luminous line that can stretch for millions of kilometers. Despite the length, the process is simple. Charged particles respond to fields and flow outward. There's no sense of effort. The tail forms as naturally as breath leaving the body. If your attention drifts while imagining this, that drifting matches the motion itself. Plasma also plays a role in shaping the boundaries of stars. In stellar atmospheres, plasma becomes less dense as it extends outward, transitioning gradually into interstellar space. There is no sharp edge. Instead, there's a slow thinning, a gentle fading. Particles drift farther apart, interactions become rarer, and eventually the plasma blends into the surrounding medium. This gradualness is typical. Plasma rarely ends abruptly. It tapers off, like sound fading into silence. In some regions, plasma rotates slowly around a central axis. This happens in accretion disks around stars and black holes, where ionized gas spirals inward over long periods. The rotation can be steady and calm, with matter taking thousands or millions of years to move noticeably closer. Friction and magnetic effects redistribute energy, allowing the disk to evolve slowly. Even near extreme objects, the plasma doesn't rush. It follows extended paths, circling again and again. The idea of something so energetic moving so patiently can feel grounding, even if only faintly noticed. Plasma turbulence is sometimes described, but turbulence here doesn't always mean chaos. In many plasmas, turbulence consists of a spectrum of motions, from large, slow swirls to tiny, quick fluctuations. Energy cascades gradually from one scale to another, dissipating softly. Nothing snaps, nothing explodes. It's more like a layered texture of motion, always changing, never demanding attention. If this feels too detailed, you can let it blur into a general sense of ongoing movement. That's enough. In Earth's upper atmosphere, plasma responds continuously to sunlight. During the day, ionization increases as ultraviolet light frees electrons. At night, recombination slowly reduces the plasma density. This daily rhythm is gentle and predictable. It doesn't require awareness to continue. Radio waves reflect differently. Satellites experience subtle changes, and life below remains largely unaffected. Plasma adjusts quietly, marking time without announcing it. Plasma can also store energy in magnetic fields, releasing it gradually or suddenly depending on conditions. But even sudden releases, on cosmic scales, unfold according to natural limits. Energy spreads out, particles disperse, balance is restored. There's no sense of intention or drama from the plasma's perspective, only response. If your mind wanders here, there's nothing to pull it back. The facts don't need to be held tightly. Sometimes plasma forms double layers regions where electric potential changes over a short distance. These layers can accelerate particles gently, shaping flows and emissions. They're stable features, often persisting without change. Scientists measure them, but they don't require interpretation to exist. They're just another way plasma organizes itself when conditions allow. The organization is quiet, almost understated. Across all these environments, one thing remains consistent. Plasma doesn't insist, it doesn't hurry, it doesn't demand clarity or attention. It follows simple tendencies over immense spans of time and space. If your awareness dips now, or if the words begin to feel distant, that's entirely compatible with the subject. Plasma is patient. It has always been patient. It will continue to be, whether noticed closely, loosely, or not at all. Plasma often exists in a state that is neither fully ordered nor fully random. Physicists sometimes describe it as being between structure and freedom. Charged particles move independently, but they are never completely alone. They feel the presence of fields, of currents, of neighboring motion. This creates a gentle tension that never quite resolves, yet never escalates. In space, this means plasma can flow smoothly for long distances, then slowly bend, ripple, or curl as conditions change. Nothing snaps into place. Nothing breaks apart suddenly. The movement is continuous, patient, and responsive. If your mind drifts here, that drifting echoes the same balance awareness present, but not fixed. In the solar wind, plasma streams outward from the sun in all directions. This flow is constant, but not uniform. It thickens and thins, speeds up and slows down, carrying magnetic fields along with it. By the time it reaches Earth, it has travelled for days, spreading out and softening as it goes. When it encounters Earth's magnetic field, it doesn't collide sharply. It slows, bends, and diverts, forming a broad boundary where energy is exchanged gently. This interaction happens continuously. whether anyone is thinking about it or not. You don't need to picture the boundary clearly. You can simply know that there is a steady conversation between the sun and earth, carried by plasma, unfolding without urgency. Plasma can also support long-lived structures that persist without maintenance. In space, magnetic loops filled with plasma can remain stable for extended periods. These loops arch gracefully, guiding particles along curved paths. They may brighten slightly, dim slightly, or shift position over time, but they don't require intervention. They are self-sustaining patterns, shaped by simple balances. This kind of stability doesn't feel rigid, it feels relaxed, as though the structure is comfortable changing just enough to remain itself. If your attention loosens here, that looseness fits the mood of the phenomenon. In some environments, plasma becomes almost transparent. It can be present without producing much light at all. Astronomers infer its existence by how it affects other things bending radio waves, slowing particles, shaping magnetic fields. Plasma doesn't need to announce itself to be influential. It can remain subtle, almost invisible. While still playing its part, this quiet presence can feel reassuring. Not everything that matters needs to be obvious. If parts of this slip past unnoticed, that's entirely appropriate. Plasma's relationship with time is also gentle. Many plasma processes unfold slowly, governed by gradual changes rather than sudden triggers. Even when energy is released, it often spreads over large volumes, reducing its intensity. In the sun's outer atmosphere, for example, plasma can take hours or days to respond fully to changes below. The response isn't delayed so much as unhurried. Cause and effect blur slightly, stretching out. This softness in timing allows everything to adjust without strain. You don't need to follow the sequence. You can let the idea of slow response settle quietly or fade away. There are plasmas so cool that they border on neutrality. In these cases, only a small fraction of particles are charged, yet that is enough to give the whole system plasma-like behavior. A few free electrons are enough to carry currents, to respond to fields, to support waves. This means plasma doesn't need to be extreme to exist. It can arise gently, almost reluctantly, under mild conditions. That threshold quality existing just enough gives plasma a softness that's easy to miss. If this feels like a detail you don't want to hold on to, you don't have to. The feeling of just enough is sufficient. Plasma often redistributes energy rather than storing it. When something becomes uneven hotter here, denser there, plasma responds by spreading things out. Waves carry energy away. Particles drift from crowded regions to emptier ones. Fields adjust. This tendency towards smoothing doesn't erase differences completely. It simply reduces sharpness. Over time, extremes soften. This isn't a goal-directed process. It's just how plasma behaves when left alone. If you notice a sense of easing while listening, that's not accidental. It mirrors the subject. In planetary ionospheres, plasma forms layered regions that rise and fall with the sun. During solar storms, these layers can shift, thicken, or thin. The changes are measured carefully, but they are rarely abrupt. Even disturbances unfold gradually, giving the system time to adapt. Life below continues without interruption. Plasma does its adjusting quietly overhead. If your thoughts wander upward for a moment, then drift away. That's fine. The plasma doesn't need witnesses. Plasma can also exist in equilibrium with radiation. In some cosmic environments, energy flows between light and charged particles in a steady exchange. Photons energize particles. Particles emit photons. The balance holds. Nothing accumulates excessively. Nothing drains away too quickly. This mutual adjustment can last for immense spans of time. It's another example of persistence without effort, if the idea feels abstract. You can let it dissolve into a general sense of quiet exchange, always ongoing. Sometimes plasma creates sounds, not audible ones, but vibrations that instruments translate into audio. When scientists convert plasma waves into sound, they often resemble low hums, whistles, or slow pulses. These sounds weren't meant to be heard. They're simply patterns made perceptible. Listening to them can feel oddly calming, as though you're hearing motion that was never trying to speak. You don't need to imagine the sounds now. You can just know they exist, waiting silently unless invited into another form. Plasma does not settle into a final state. There is no moment when it is done. It continues responding, adjusting, redistributing, as long as conditions allow. This ongoingness has no urgency attached to it. It doesn't build toward completion, it simply persists. If you find yourself letting go of the words now, allowing them to pass without forming clear images, that is entirely in harmony with plasma's nature. It continues whether it is followed closely or loosely. Across stars, planets, laboratories, and the deep spaces between galaxies, plasma behaves with the same quiet consistency. Different environments, different scales, the same underlying tendencies, motion guided rather than forced, change spread out rather than concentrated, balance approached but never locked in. You don't need to connect these ideas into a whole. They can remain separate or blur together or fade. Plasma itself does not insist on coherence. It allows drifting, and it remains calmly either way. Plasma often reveals itself through softness rather than force. In many environments, its presence is detected not by brightness, but by gentle influence. A spacecraft passing through plasma may feel a slight change in electric potential. Radio signals may bend subtly as they travel through ionized regions. Particles may slow or curve without ever colliding. These effects are small, easy to overlook, and entirely continuous. Plasma does not announce itself loudly. It prefers to be inferred, felt indirectly, known without display. If your awareness drifts while hearing this, that indirectness mirrors the way plasma itself is encountered. In the long evenings and nights of Earth, plasma quietly reshapes the upper sky. As sunlight fades, electrons and ions slowly recombine, releasing energy as faint light or heat. This process doesn't end suddenly when the sun sets. It tapers off, layers thin gradually. The atmosphere adjusts at its own pace, without reference to clocks or schedules. By morning, sunlight begins the process again, gently, predictably. Plasma marks time without urgency, repeating cycles that don't require attention to remain reliable. You don't need to notice these rhythms for them to continue. Some plasmas exist so close to equilibrium that very little happens at all. Particles move, but their motions cancel out on large scales. Currents flow, but net effects remain steady. From a distance, such plasma can appear almost motionless, even though countless tiny movements are ongoing. This kind of quiet activity is common in space. Not everything dramatic leaves visible traces. Much of plasma's life is spent maintaining balance, not disrupting it. If your thoughts grow still here, that stillness is not a departure, it's a reflection. Plasma's ability to respond collectively is one of its defining traits. A small change in one region can influence distant areas through fields and waves, but this influence spreads gently. It doesn't leap. It travels at finite speeds, diffusing as it goes. In large plasmas, responses can take minutes, hours, or longer to propagate fully. This built-in slowness prevents sharp reactions. It gives the system time to absorb change. You don't need to track where the influence goes. You can simply rest with the idea that connection does not require immediacy. In some regions of space, Plasma becomes almost cold. Temperatures drop so low that particle motion slows dramatically. Even then, a few charged particles remain free enough to define the behavior of the whole. The plasma doesn't disappear, it thins, it quiets. It approaches stillness without ever quite reaching it. This near silence is still active, still responsive. If this description feels like it's fading as you hear it, that fading fits naturally with the subject. Plasma often mediates between extremes, between hot stars and cold space, between energetic particles and calm regions. It acts as a buffer, absorbing and redistributing energy. This mediating role doesn't require awareness or adjustment. It's simply how plasma behaves when placed between differences. Gradients soften, transitions stretch out. Nothing snaps from one state to another. If your own internal state feels like it's moving gently between alertness and rest, that's entirely in tune. Plasma can also exist in layered forms, in planetary atmospheres. Ionized layers stack gently, each responding to different wavelengths of sunlight. These layers shift with seasons, with solar cycles, with long-term changes in radiation. The shifts are slow. Boundaries blur. Nothing marks a clear beginning or end. If you're only catching fragments of this idea now, that's enough. The details are less important than the sense of gradual change. In stellar remnants, like planetary nebulae, plasma drifts outward into space. These glowing shells expand over thousands of years, thinning as they go. The light becomes fainter, the structure more diffuse. Eventually, the plasma merges with the surrounding medium, no longer distinct. There is no final moment, no clear disappearance, just continued spreading until separation no longer makes sense. This kind of ending without an endpoint is common in plasma processes. If the thought dissolves as you hear it, that dissolution is appropriate. Plasma sometimes forms gentle oscillations that repeat endlessly. Particles sway back and forth under restoring forces, never traveling far. These oscillations can persist as long as conditions remain stable. They don't build up, they don't decay quickly, they simply continue. Instruments detect them as steady frequencies, calm and regular. You don't need to remember their names or values. You can just hold or release the idea of motion that never demands progress. In magnetized plasmas, motion often follows curved paths. Straight lines are rare. Particles spiral, drift, loop. This curved motion spreads energy over space and time, reducing sharp impacts. It creates patterns that feel organic, even though they arise from simple physical laws. These laws don't instruct or compel. They describe tendencies that plasma follows naturally. If your thoughts curve away from the words now, looping gently elsewhere, that is entirely aligned. Plasma does not strive for permanence. It also does not resist change. It exists in a middle state, adapting continuously to whatever surrounds it. This adaptability is not effortful, it's passive responsiveness. When fields change, plasma adjusts. When energy arrives, plasma absorbs and redistributes. When energy fades, plasma quiets. There's no preferred outcome, just ongoing presence. As these facts continue to pass by, you may notice that they don't demand to be connected. They don't need to form a picture or a sequence. They can remain separate impressions or blur together into a general sense of calm motion and quiet persistence. Plasma itself doesn't organize its behavior into lessons or narratives. It simply responds, moment by moment, over spans of time that make moments feel very wide. If you're listening closely, or loosely, or barely at all of those ways of being are welcome here. Plasma does not require observation to continue existing. It does not require memory. It does not require attention. It remains gently active, filling space without pressure, whether noticed clearly, dimly, or not at all. Plasma often occupies the spaces where definitions soften. It isn't quite solid, never liquid, and only sometimes like a gas. Its particles move freely, yet remain subtly connected through fields that extend beyond touch. This in-between quality gives plasma a gentle flexibility. It doesn't insist on boundaries, it adapts to what surrounds it, shaping itself to conditions rather than resisting them. In many places in the universe, plasma exists simply because nothing stops it from existing. Energy arrives, particles respond, and plasma appears without ceremony. If this feels vague or unfinished as you hear it, that openness is fitting. Plasma itself lives comfortably in unfinished states. In the quiet reaches far from stars, plasma cools slowly over time. As energy dissipates, motion becomes less intense, but it never fully stops. Even a small amount of residual charge is enough to keep the system responsive. Particles continue their slow drift, guided by faint magnetic structures that persist long after more dramatic events have passed. This lingering motion doesn't serve a purpose, it's simply what remains. If your thoughts linger here for a moment, or drift away entirely, both are welcome. Plasma does not require accompaniment. Plasma has a way of making distance feel less absolute. Through fields and waves, regions far apart can influence one another without contact. This influence travels gradually, softening as it goes. By the time it arrives, it is rarely disruptive. Instead, it blends into the background motion of the system. This is common in space plasmas, where interactions span immense distances but unfold gently. You don't need to picture the scale accurately. You can let the idea of distant connection exist without detail, or let it pass. In rotating systems, plasma often settles into steady flows around planets, stars, and even entire galaxies. Ionized matter circulates calmly, guided by gravity and magnetic structure. These motions can persist for ages, changing only slightly over time. The rotation doesn't build toward an end, it simply continues, distributing energy and momentum evenly. If you imagine this as a slow, continuous turning, that's enough. And if the image fades before it forms clearly, that's also fine. Plasma's tendency to smooth sharp differences is one of its quieter traits. When energy concentrates in one area, plasma responds by spreading it outward. This redistribution happens through waves, particle motion, and field adjustment. It doesn't eliminate variation entirely, it just reduces extremes. Over time, steep gradients become gentler slopes. This isn't something plasma decides to do. It's a natural outcome of how charged particles interact. If you feel a sense of easing while listening, that easing mirrors the process itself. In some stellar environments, plasma forms extended atmospheres that drift outward indefinitely. These stellar winds carry matter away from stars at modest speeds. Thinning as they travel, the particles don't rush, they respond to pressure and fields, moving steadily into surrounding space. Eventually, they become indistinguishable from the interstellar medium. There's no moment when they stop being part of the star and start being something else. The transition is gradual. If the idea feels unfinished, that's because it is. Plasma transitions rarely have sharp edges. Plasma can exist alongside strong forces without becoming unstable. Near massive objects, like neutron stars, ionized matter experiences intense gravity and magnetic fields. Yet even there, plasma often organizes into stable flows and layers. Motion follows curved paths. Energy redistributes. Balance is maintained for long periods. The environment may sound extreme, but the behavior remains measured. Nothing is frantic. If your attention dips here, that's acceptable. The plasma doesn't demand that you witness it. In laboratory settings, researchers sometimes describe plasma as well-behaved. This doesn't mean predictable in every detail, but rather responsive in expected ways. Given certain conditions, plasma tends to form familiar patterns. These patterns may shift slowly, oscillate, or drift, but they do so within gentle limits. The goal is often to maintain this calm behavior, allowing observation without disruption. Even under close study, plasma is allowed to remain itself dynamic, but not agitated. You don't need to hold on to the specifics. The overall sense of controlled motion is enough. Plasma's interactions with magnetic fields often create loops and arcs. These shapes arise naturally as particles spiral along field lines. The motion is continuous and curved, rarely straight. This curvature spreads energy over time, reducing sudden impacts in solar plasma. These loops can be seen glowing softly against the darker background of space. They may persist for hours or days, shifting subtly before dissolving. If the image comes and goes in your mind, that's entirely in tune with the phenomenon. In many cases, plasma acts as a quiet intermediary. It sits between radiation and matter, absorbing energy and releasing it gradually. This role is especially clear in cosmic environments, where plasma moderates how energy moves from stars into surrounding space. Without plasma, these transfers would be harsher, more abrupt. With it, transitions become smoother. If your listening becomes softer here, less focused. That softness aligns with plasma's function. Plasma does not accumulate history. It doesn't remember its past states. Each moment is shaped by present conditions. Fields exist, particles respond, and the system evolves accordingly. There's no preference for what came before. This makes plasma adaptable without effort. If you find yourself not remembering what was said a moment ago, that's perfectly appropriate. Plasma would not mind that at all. In planetary magnetospheres, plasma circulates in large-scale patterns that repeat endlessly. Particles drift around planets, guided by magnetic structure, sometimes completing countless loops before escaping. The motion is slow and regular. Nothing pushes it toward resolution. It simply continues, shaped by forces that remain stable over long periods. If you imagine this as a kind of quiet orbiting, that's enough. If you don't imagine it at all, that's fine too. Plasma often exists at the edge of visibility, too thin to glow brightly, too diffuse to stand out. It influences its surroundings quietly. Astronomers detect it through indirect means: slight changes in motion, faint emissions, subtle distortions. Plasma doesn't demand to be seen clearly. It allows ambiguity. If parts of this drift past without forming clear impressions, that ambiguity is welcome here. Across all these settings, plasma maintains the same fundamental character: responsive without urgency, dynamic without agitation, present without insistence. It fills space gently, adapting continuously, never settling into a final form. As these ideas move by, you're free to follow them closely, loosely, or not at all. Plasma continues either way, calmly active, patient, and unconcerned with whether it is fully noticed. Plasma often behaves as though it is listening more than acting. It responds to its surroundings without asserting itself. When a magnetic field is present, plasma aligns with it. When energy enters, plasma absorbs and redistributes it. When conditions soften, plasma softens too. There is no internal drive toward complexity or simplicity, only responsiveness. This quality makes plasma feel calm, even when it is energetic. If your attention loosens here, that looseness mirrors the subject. Plasma does not grip, it yields. In the space between stars, plasma carries faint echoes of past events. A distant supernova may have sent waves through the interstellar medium millions of years ago. those waves spread, thinned, and faded, leaving behind only subtle changes in motion and structure. Nothing remains sharp, nothing demands acknowledgement. Plasma holds these traces lightly, allowing them to dissolve over time. The universe does not archive everything distinctly. Much of it is allowed to blur. If the words you're hearing now begin to blur as well, that is entirely fitting. Plasma can exist in steady states that last longer than civilizations. In galactic halos, ionized gas surrounds entire galaxies, extending far beyond visible stars. This plasma rotates slowly, interacts gently with incoming material, and changes so gradually that 1 million years can pass without noticeable difference. It is neither building nor collapsing. It simply persists. You don't need to imagine the size of a galaxy to sense this persistence. You can feel it as a kind of background presence, always there, never urgent. Plasma's motions are often guided rather than driven. Instead of being pushed from behind, particles follow paths laid out by fields and gradients. This produces movement that feels inevitable, but not forceful. In Earth's magnetosphere, plasma drifts along large circuits, completing loops that take hours or days. The motion is smooth, continuous, and repeatable. Nothing compels it to finish. It can keep circling as long as the fields remain. If your thoughts circle back to earlier ideas or wander in gentle loops of their own, that rhythm fits comfortably here. Some plasmas exist at temperatures that feel counterintuitive. There are plasmas hotter than any furnace, and plasmas colder than deep space. Temperature alone does not define them. What matters is charge and responsiveness. This flexibility allows plasma to appear in many guises, from blazing stellar interiors to faint, cold clouds between galaxies. Despite the differences, the underlying behavior remains similar: adaptation, response, gradual change. You don't need to keep track of which environment is which. They can blend together into a single sense of quiet variability. Plasma often reduces contrast. When there's a sharp boundary between regions, plasma tends to soften it. Particles cross, fields adjust, waves carry influence across the divide. Over time, the difference becomes less pronounced. This smoothing doesn't erase individuality, it just eases extremes. In cosmic plasmas, this process unfolds over long timescales, making sudden change rare. If your inner state feels like it's settling into something less sharply defined, that's not accidental, it echoes the same tendency. In some laboratory plasmas, researchers observe self-organization. Without being directed, plasma can arrange itself into repeating patterns. These patterns emerge from simple interactions, not from planning. They persist for a while, then change or dissolve. Nothing insists on permanence. The system remains open to adjustment. This quality makes plasma feel alive to some observers, though it has no intention or awareness. It's simply responsive matter, behaving consistently across contexts. If this description drifts into the background as you hear it, that's perfectly acceptable. Plasma can act as a bridge between scales. Tiny particle motions combine to create large, smooth flows. Large structures influence small behaviors in return. This two-way relationship creates coherence without rigidity. In the sun's atmosphere, countless small interactions give rise to broad patterns that persist over time. The details change constantly, but the overall shape remains recognizable. You don't need to hold both levels in mind. You can rest with the idea that complexity can arise gently, without strain. Plasma does not hurry toward equilibrium, but it does tend in that direction. When left alone, it spreads energy and charge until differences are minimized. This process can take a long time, especially in low-density environments. During that time, plasma remains active, adjusting continuously. Equilibrium is approached but rarely reached fully. There is always some motion left. If your listening feels like it's approaching rest without quite arriving, that parallels this behavior closely. Plasma is often described using mathematics, but its lived behavior is smooth and continuous. Equations describe tendencies, not commands. They capture how plasma usually responds, not what it must do. This leaves room for variation, for gentle unpredictability within limits. Nothing about plasma feels brittle. It bends rather than breaks. If your thoughts bend away from the words now, finding their own paths, that flexibility is welcome here. In cosmic voids, the emptiest regions between galaxy clusters, plasma still exists. Extremely thin, extremely quiet, but present. It traces the faintest structures, guided by gravity and leftover magnetic fields. These regions change so slowly that even astronomical instruments struggle to detect motion. Yet motion is there, subtle and ongoing. Presence does not require activity to be obvious. If your awareness feels almost still, with only faint movement beneath it, that is entirely aligned. Plasma does not resolve into a final story. It doesn't build toward an ending or a climax. Its processes overlap, repeat, and fade. This makes it well suited to drifting attention. You can enter at any point, leave at any point, and nothing essential is missed. Plasma continues regardless. It doesn't depend on continuity of observation. If you find yourself forgetting what was just said, there is no loss here. Across the universe, plasma fills space the way quiet fills a room at night, not empty, not loud, simply present. It moves slowly, responds gently, and persists without urgency. As these ideas continue to pass by, you're free to hold them lightly or let them go entirely. Plasma itself does not cling. It remains calm, adaptive, and quietly active, whether noticed closely, distantly, or not at all. Plasma often occupies regions where nothing else seems to linger. In the quiet after energetic events, after stars shed material or galaxies drift apart, plasma remains as a kind of afterglow. It doesn't rush to disappear. It thins slowly, stretching out over space and time. Particles move farther apart. Interactions become rarer, but responsiveness remains. Even a faint trace of charge is enough to keep plasma behaving like plasma. This persistence doesn't feel stubborn. It feels gentle, as though plasma is comfortable staying as long as conditions allow. If your awareness lingers briefly here or slips away, both are natural responses to something that doesn't insist. In regions where plasma flows steadily, patterns can emerge that feel almost restful to observe. Currents form loops, waves repeat familiar shapes. Motion becomes rhythmic without becoming rigid. In Earth's near-space environment, satellites pass through these regions continuously, recording small fluctuations that repeat day after day. The plasma doesn't aim for novelty, it settles into what works, maintaining balance rather than seeking change. If your thoughts fall into a similar rhythm, returning to familiar ideas, drifting gently, that repetition is not a distraction, it's a form of settling. Plasma often acts as a quiet messenger between distant parts of a system. Through fields and waves, changes in one place influence others without physical contact. This communication is slow and diffuse. By the time it arrives, it rarely feels like an interruption. Instead, it blends into ongoing motion in large cosmic plasmas. This means that no region is entirely isolated, yet nothing is overwhelmed by connection. Influence spreads thinly, evenly. You don't need to imagine signals or messages. You can simply rest with the idea that connection can be calm and non-intrusive. In some stellar environments, plasma cools enough to begin forming neutral atoms again. This transition doesn't happen all at once. Electrons recombine gradually, releasing energy softly. The plasma becomes less luminous, less active, but not suddenly absent. It fades rather than ends. This kind of gradual transformation is common. Plasma rarely stops being plasma abruptly. It transitions slowly, adjusting to new conditions without resistance. If the words you're hearing now begin to soften or blur, that fading aligns naturally with the process being described. Plasma can exist in equilibrium for long stretches, changing so slowly that motion is almost imperceptible. In these states, small disturbances are absorbed and dissipated without lasting effect. The system returns gently to its prior condition. This resilience doesn't come from rigidity, it comes from flexibility, the ability to redistribute energy and adjust without strain. Such plasmas don't need to be monitored closely to remain stable. They hold themselves together through simple interactions. If your attention relaxes here, feeling less pulled toward the words, that relaxation mirrors the stability of the subject. Plasma also shapes the edges of many cosmic structures. At the boundaries of nebulae, of stellar winds, of planetary magnetospheres, plasma forms transition zones. These zones are not sharp lines. They are wide regions where properties change gradually. Density decreases, temperature shifts, motion slows or redirects. Nothing marks a precise border. If you notice that ideas seem to blend into one another now, rather than standing apart clearly, that blending is entirely appropriate. In controlled environments, plasma can be remarkably quiet. Low-temperature plasmas used in research and industry often glow faintly, producing a steady, uniform light. There is no flicker, no surge. The plasma remains contained, interacting gently with its surroundings. This calm behavior challenges the idea that plasma must be dramatic. Often, it is subdued, almost meditative. If this description feels calming without demanding attention, that's not incidental. Plasma is comfortable existing without spectacle. Plasma's tendency to distribute energy evenly helps prevent extremes. When a region becomes too energetic, plasma channels that energy outward, waves form, particles drift, fields adjust. The result is moderation rather than accumulation. Over time, the system becomes smoother. This isn't a conscious process. It's a natural outcome of charged particles interacting. If you feel a sense of easing as you listen, thoughts becoming less sharp, sensations less defined, that easing reflects the same principle. In some parts of the universe, plasma is so diffuse that it barely interacts at all. Particles travel long distances without encountering others, yet even here, fields provide a subtle structure. Motion follows gentle curves rather than straight lines. Nothing moves entirely alone. This balance between independence and connection is a recurring theme. Plasma allows particles freedom while maintaining coherence. If your mind feels free to wander while still loosely connected to the sound of words, that balance is welcome. Plasma does not store memory of its configurations. When conditions change, old patterns dissolve without regret. New ones form as needed. There is no attachment to previous states. This makes plasma endlessly adaptable. If you forget parts of what you've heard, there is no loss here. The experience does not rely on accumulation. Each moment stands on its own. As these segments continue, they don't build toward a conclusion. They don't need to. Plasma itself doesn't build toward endings. Its processes overlap, repeat, soften, and persist. You can enter this flow at any point and leave at any point. Nothing essential is missed. Plasma continues quietly, responsive and calm, whether attended to closely, loosely, or not at all. Plasma often exists as a kind of background condition, something that doesn't ask to be foregrounded. In many regions of space, it forms the environment rather than the object of interest. Stars move through it, galaxies sit within it, radiation passes through it without interruption. Plasma does not step forward to be noticed. It stays where it is, shaping motion quietly. If you find yourself only half aware of these words now, that half awareness fits well. Plasma itself is often only partially noticed, inferred rather than seen, present without insistence. In the gentle flow of the solar wind, plasma carries the sun's influence outward in all directions. This flow is steady, but it breathes slightly, expanding and contracting as conditions change. Magnetic fields travel along with it, embedded in the moving plasma like faint threads. By the time this flow reaches distant planets, it has softened, spread out, and lost any sharp edges. Nothing about it feels abrupt. It arrives gradually, interacts gently, and moves on. You don't need to imagine the journey clearly. You can let the sense of slow arrival and departure settle, or fade as it likes. Plasma has a way of filling available space without crowding it. Because charged particles repel and attract each other over distances, plasma naturally spreads out. Dense regions expand. Sparse regions draw particles in slowly. Over time, this leads to distributions that feel even and calm. There's no piling up, no clumping without cause, just a gradual balancing. If your own sense of attention spreads out here less focused, more diffuse that mirrors plasma's tendency exactly. In astrophysical jets, plasma flows outward from the centers of galaxies in long, narrow streams. These jets can extend for thousands of light years, remaining coherent across astonishing distances. Despite their length, the motion within them is often steady and ordered. Magnetic fields guide the plasma, keeping it aligned and contained. The flow persists not because it is forced, but because conditions allow it to remain stable. If this sounds impressive, it doesn't need to feel exciting. It can simply be another example of how plasma sustains motion quietly over long times. Plasma can also exist in states where very little changes from moment to moment. In these quasi-static conditions, particles move, but large-scale properties remain constant. Temperature stays steady. Density fluctuates only slightly. Fields maintain their structure. From the outside, it can look as though nothing is happening, and yet, internally, countless small motions continue. This quiet activity without visible change is common in plasma systems. If your listening reaches a similar place present, but not actively processing, that's entirely appropriate. In planetary rings and dusty environments, plasma interacts with tiny grains of matter. These grains become charged and begin to move in response to fields. The resulting motion is slow and graceful. Particles drift, settle into patterns, and sometimes hover in place. The system evolves without urgency, guided by gentle forces. Nothing crashes, nothing needs correction. If your thoughts drift into small, slow loops here, that looping fits naturally with the subject. Plasma's ability to support currents without solid conductors allows it to form vast electrical systems in space. These currents don't spark or burn. They flow smoothly through ionized matter, closing on themselves over immense distances. Magnetic fields wrap around them, stabilizing the flow. Energy moves continuously, without wear or fatigue. This kind of endurance doesn't require effort. It's simply a consequence of plasma's properties. If you feel a sense of continuity here, something ongoing without strain, that feeling is well placed. In the upper atmospheres of planets, plasma responds subtly to changes in sunlight. When solar activity increases, ionization rises. When it decreases, recombination follows. These adjustments don't happen instantly. They unfold over hours, days, sometimes longer. The atmosphere takes its time, plasma adjusts without hurry, life below continues, mostly unaware. If your awareness of the words rises and falls now, that gentle responsiveness is mirrored above the planet every day. Plasma does not isolate itself from its surroundings. It is always interacting, always responding. But these interactions are rarely abrupt. They involve gradual exchanges of energy and momentum. Waves pass through, fields adjust, particles drift. The overall effect is one of continuous accommodation. Nothing needs to dominate for the system to function. If your listening becomes more receptive than active, that receptive state aligns with plasma's way of being. In cosmic plasmas, boundaries are often wide regions rather than sharp edges. Transitions from one state to another stretch out over space. Properties change slowly. One environment blends into the next. This makes classification difficult but experience gentle. Nothing insists on a clear line. If ideas seem to merge together now, not quite distinct, not quite separate, that merging reflects the nature of plasma boundaries. Plasma's presence in the universe is steady enough that astronomers often treat it as a given. It's the default condition rather than the exception. Wherever energy and matter coexist, plasma is likely there, quietly participating. It doesn't require special circumstances to appear. It emerges naturally and remains as long as conditions allow. If this feels like background information rather than something to hold on to, that's exactly how plasma tends to be: background, supportive, persistent. In some contexts, plasma can damp motion rather than amplify it. Waves lose energy as they travel. Disturbances spread out and weaken. Over time, the system returns to a calm state. This damping doesn't erase motion completely, it just smooths it. Sharp fluctuations become gentle variations. If your internal state feels like it's smoothing out now, fewer sharp thoughts, softer sensations that experience echoes plasma's natural tendencies. Plasma also participates in cycles that have no beginning or end. Material leaves stars, travels through space, and eventually becomes part of new systems. Along the way, it remains plasma for long stretches, changing slowly. There is no clear moment when the cycle resets. It simply continues. If your sense of time feels less defined here, less segmented, that softness aligns well with the subject. As these segments pass, there is no need to gather them into a whole. They don't build toward a conclusion. They don't require continuity. Each one stands comfortably on its own, just as plasma exists comfortably in many forms without needing to resolve into a single picture. You can listen closely, loosely, or not at all. Plasma continues either way, filling space gently, responding calmly, and remaining present without asking to be held in mind. Plasma often appears where other forms of matter begin to thin out. As gases become hotter or more diffuse, electrons loosen their hold, and the distinction between particles softens. What remains is a medium that is neither tightly bound nor completely free. This intermediate state allows plasma to move easily, to respond gently, and to occupy space without pressing on it. In many regions of the universe, plasma is simply what matter becomes when nothing confines it strongly. If this idea feels open-ended, that openness is fitting, plasma rarely feels finished or enclosed. In the slow expansion of the universe, plasma has had time to settle into large, calm patterns. After early eras of heat and density, matter spread out, cooled, and organized gradually. Plasma lingered through these changes, adapting at each step. Even now, much of the space between galaxies contains thin plasma that changes almost imperceptibly over millions of years. There is motion, but it is patient. There is change, but it is not dramatic. If your awareness drifts as you hear this, that drifting mirrors the timescales involved. Plasma often follows the path of least resistance, not because it seeks ease, but because that is how forces distribute themselves. Electric fields guide charged particles gently, allowing motion without friction. Magnetic fields curve paths into slow spirals. The result is movement that feels smooth rather than driven. In laboratory plasmas, this behavior is carefully observed, but it exists just as naturally in space. Plasma doesn't need guidance to behave calmly. It does so by default. If your thoughts begin to follow their own gentle paths now, that is entirely in tune. In many environments, plasma supports oscillations that act like quiet breathing. Fields compress slightly, then relax. Particles move inward, then outward. These motions repeat without building in intensity. They don't aim for resolution. They simply continue as long as conditions remain stable. In cosmic plasmas, such oscillations can last for long periods, forming a kind of background rhythm. You don't need to notice the rhythm clearly. You can let it remain a vague sense of ongoing motion. Plasma has a natural ability to carry energy across space without concentrating it. Instead of piling energy into one place, plasma spreads it through waves and distributed motion. This makes energetic environments more gentle than they might otherwise be. In stellar atmospheres, for example, plasma transports energy outward slowly, preventing sudden changes. The star remains stable because energy is allowed to move without pressure. If your internal experience feels steadier as you listen, that steadiness reflects the same principle. Plasma often creates soft boundaries rather than sharp ones. Where two regions meet, plasma forms a gradual transition zone. Properties change slowly across space. Temperature shifts, density thins, motion redirects. There is rarely a clear line where one state ends and another begins. This makes plasma environments feel continuous rather than segmented. If the ideas you're hearing blend together now, rather than forming clear divisions, that blending is welcome here. In the quiet reaches near planetary bodies, plasma drifts in slow circulation patterns. Around Earth, charged particles loop along magnetic field lines, moving from one hemisphere to the other. The journey can take hours or days. Along the way, particles may emit faint light or transfer small amounts of energy. The process repeats endlessly. Nothing compels it to finish. If your attention loops back to earlier thoughts or wanders gently, that looping mirrors the motion itself. Plasma can exist without producing light, remaining almost entirely invisible. In these cases, its presence is known only through its effects. Radio waves bend slightly, particles change direction, fields behave differently than they would in empty space. Plasma does not require visibility to be influential. It can remain subtle and still shape its environment. If parts of this description pass by unnoticed, that subtlety is fitting. Plasma's interactions are often cooperative rather than competitive. Particles influence one another through fields that extend smoothly through space. No single particle dominates. Behavior emerges from many small interactions, each modest on its own. This collective behavior feels calm because it lacks sharp edges. Nothing insists on being the center. If your listening feels more like being present than actively processing, that cooperative state aligns with the subject. In cosmic timescales, plasma participates in cycles that repeat without clear beginnings. Material becomes plasma, then neutral, then plasma again under changing conditions. Stars form from ionized clouds, shine, shed plasma, and fade. The matter continues, changing form without urgency. Plasma is one phase in a long sequence that doesn't require remembering earlier steps. If you forget where this segment began, there is no loss. The process itself does not depend on memory. Plasma can absorb disturbances gently. When a wave passes through, energy is spread across many particles. Motion becomes shared rather than concentrated. Over time, the disturbance fades without leaving a sharp trace. This damping effect contributes to the calm character of many plasma systems. Nothing is amplified unnecessarily. If your thoughts soften here, losing sharp focus, that softness echoes the same behavior. In the upper layers of stars, plasma flows outward slowly, forming winds that carry matter into space. These winds are steady and diffuse. Particles leave the star not in bursts, but in continuous streams. As they travel, they thin out and merge with surrounding plasma. There is no moment of separation. The transition is smooth. If your sense of direction feels less defined now, that lack of sharp boundary aligns well with the phenomenon. Plasma often allows different scales of motion to coexist. Small, fast fluctuations happen alongside large, slow flows. Neither overwhelms the other. The system accommodates both. This layered motion gives plasma its depth without making it unstable. You don't need to hold both scales in mind. You can let the idea of layered calm remain vague or fade entirely. Plasma does not resist change, but it does not rush to embrace it either. When conditions shift, plasma responds gradually. Fields realign, particles redistribute. The adjustment takes time. This delay is not inefficiency, it's gentleness built into the system. If your awareness takes time to shift between thoughts, that pacing fits naturally here. In many scientific descriptions, plasma is treated as a fluid, even though it is made of particles. This approximation works because collective behavior dominates. Individual motions blur into smooth flows. The result is something that behaves continuously rather than discretely. This continuity is part of what makes plasma feel soothing to think about. Nothing jumps abruptly. Everything flows. If your listening becomes more fluid than attentive, that is entirely appropriate. Plasma can exist in balance with its environment for long periods. Energy enters and leaves at similar rates. Fields remain stable. Motion continues without escalation. These steady states are not static. They are dynamic, but calm. If your internal state feels dynamic but restful, that experience resonates with plasma's nature. As these segments move along, they don't accumulate into a conclusion. They remain a series of gentle impressions, overlapping and repeating. Plasma itself does not progress toward an endpoint. It continues responding, redistributing, adapting, as long as conditions allow. You're free to listen fully, partially, or not at all. Nothing depends on your attention. Plasma continues quietly, filling space with calm motion, patient and uninsistent, whether noticed clearly, dimly, or not at all. Plasma often settles into patterns that feel almost habitual. Once conditions stabilize, motion repeats in familiar ways. Particles trace the same curved paths. Currents close into loops that persist. Waves travel routes they have traveled before. This repetition does not mean stagnation. It means comfort. The system has found a way to continue without strain. In space, such patterns can last longer than any single object within them. Stars move, planets shift, but the plasma environment remains largely the same. If your attention begins to rest on the sound of words rather than their meaning, that gentle repetition is doing its work. Plasma itself is content with familiarity. In many plasma environments, nothing happens all at once. Change is distributed. A disturbance introduced in one place spreads outward, thinning as it goes. By the time it reaches distant regions, it has softened into something barely noticeable. This spreading prevents shock. It allows systems to adjust without disruption. In astrophysical plasmas, this is one reason large structures remain stable over long periods. energy has room to move. If your thoughts wander far from where they began, thinning out as they go, that wandering echoes plasma's way of carrying influence. Plasma can exist without direction in the usual sense. It doesn't always flow from one place to another. Sometimes it circulates locally, turning back on itself. These closed motions are common in magnetized environments, where particles spiral and drift without ever escaping. The motion is ongoing, but not progressive. Nothing is being accomplished. Nothing needs to be. If your listening feels circular, returning again and again to the same calm state, that circularity is welcome here. In the quiet of interplanetary space, plasma density changes gently with distance. Closer to the Sun, particles are more numerous and energetic. Farther away, they thin and cool. There is no sharp cutoff, only a gradual fading. Space transitions from one condition to another so slowly that boundaries lose meaning. Plasma inhabits these gradients comfortably. If your awareness feels suspended between alertness and rest, not firmly in either, that in-between state matches plasma's natural home. Plasma often carries electric currents that never announce themselves. These currents do not heat wires or create sparks. They exist as steady flows of charged particles through space. Magnetic fields wrap around them, giving them shape and stability. The currents can persist for immense spans of time, changing only when the larger environment changes. They do not seek completion. They simply circulate. If your sense of time loosens here, becoming less segmented, that loosening aligns with the endless nature of these flows. In some cosmic environments, plasma is so diffuse that individual particles travel enormous distances before interacting, and yet, fields still link them into a collective. This means plasma can feel both sparse and connected at the same time. Freedom and coherence coexist. Nothing is crowded, nothing is isolated. This balance gives plasma its calm character. If your mind feels free to drift while still lightly connected to the sound of the voice, that balance is entirely appropriate. Plasma's interactions often lack friction in the everyday sense. Without solid surfaces to rub against, motion can continue smoothly. Energy changes form rather than being lost abruptly. Waves become other waves, motion becomes heat, then spreads. Nothing grinds to a halt. In space, this allows plasma systems to remain active without wearing themselves down. If your listening feels effortless now, requiring no concentration, that ease mirrors the physics involved. Plasma does not need symmetry, but it often finds it. Under stable conditions, flows and fields arrange themselves into balanced configurations. These configurations may not be perfect, but they are sufficient. They hold together without correction. Small irregularities appear and fade. The overall pattern remains. If your experience feels balanced but not rigid awake, yet relaxed, that equilibrium resonates with plasma's behavior. In planetary environments, plasma participates in cycles that repeat daily, seasonally, and over longer solar rhythms. Ionization rises and falls, currents strengthen and weaken, auroral activity waxes and wanes. These cycles are gentle. They do not require attention to continue. They mark time without urgency. If your sense of time becomes vague here, less tied to minutes or seconds, that vagueness reflects the scale of these processes. Plasma can act as a quiet absorber of excess energy. When too much energy enters a system, plasma disperses it through collective motion. Waves form, particles drift apart, fields adjust. The system returns to a calmer state. This tendency prevents runaway behavior in many cosmic settings. Nothing is allowed to escalate indefinitely. If your internal state feels like it's settling after stimulation, that settling follows the same principle. In many descriptions, plasma is treated statistically rather than individually. This is because no single particle defines the behavior. It's the average, the collective, the shared motion that matters. Individual details blur into smooth trends. This makes plasma forgiving. Small variations don't matter much. If you miss a sentence here or there, nothing essential is lost. The experience does not depend on precision. Plasma often surrounds objects without clinging to them. Around planets and stars, it forms envelopes and halos, held loosely by fields and gravity. These envelopes shift and breathe. They expand and contract slightly. They respond to external conditions without attachment. If you imagine this as a gentle surrounding rather than a tight grip, that image fits well. And if you don't imagine it at all, that's equally fine. Plasma's presence can be continuous even when it is not visible. Many plasmas emit little or no light. They are known only through their effects on motion and fields. This invisibility does not make them weak. It simply makes them quiet. If the words feel like they are receding now, becoming background sound, that quiet presence mirrors plasma's unseen influence. Across all these environments, plasma does not aim to impress. It does not rush, accumulate, or resolve. It remains responsive, adaptable, and calm. It fills space where conditions allow and fades where they do not, without resistance. As these ideas continue to pass by, you are free to remain present, to drift, or to sleep. Plasma continues either way, softly active, patient, and entirely unconcerned with whether it is fully noticed. Plasma often lives in places where stillness and motion overlap. There is movement, but it doesn't feel like activity. Particles drift, fields adjust, waves pass through, yet the overall scene remains calm. In space, this kind of motion can persist indefinitely, never quite settling, never escalating. It's the kind of motion that doesn't interrupt rest. If you imagine it at all, it might feel like a slow current beneath a quiet surface. And if you don't imagine it clearly, that's perfectly fine. Plasma does not depend on clear images. It exists comfortably in vagueness. In many regions of the universe, plasma acts as a soft connector. It links stars to their surroundings, planets to their space, galaxies to the larger structure around them. This connection isn't tight or binding, it's loose, flexible, and patient. Influences travel through plasma slowly, spreading out as they go. Nothing arrives all at once. Nothing demands immediate response. This allows vast systems to remain coordinated without tension. If your thoughts feel loosely connected, now drifting, but not completely gone, that state mirrors plasma's role beautifully. Plasma does not require density to matter. Even when particles are few and far between, their shared fields maintain coherence. A single charged particle can influence others across large distances, but that influence weakens gently, never sharply. The result is a medium that feels spacious rather than crowded. Freedom and connection exist together without conflict. If your awareness feels spacious here, with room to drift, that spaciousness belongs. In stellar environments, plasma often forms long-lived layers. Near the surface of stars, ionized matter arranges itself into regions that rise and fall slowly. Heat moves outward, particles circulate, the layers shift, but they don't collapse. This layered motion is steady enough to last for long periods. Even as individual particles come and go, the structure persists without effort. If you find yourself noticing the rhythm of breathing, or not noticing it at all, both experiences fit comfortably alongside this kind of gentle persistence. Plasma also has a way of absorbing change without resistance. When conditions shift, plasma responds gradually. Fields realign, particles redistribute, waves carry information outward until it fades into the background. Nothing pushes back, nothing holds on, The system simply adjusts until a new balance is found. If the words you're hearing now begin to feel softer or less distinct, that softening reflects plasma's natural response to change. In interstellar clouds, plasma coexists with neutral gas and dust. These environments are quiet and cold, yet still active. Ionized particles drift slowly among neutral atoms. Dust grains acquire tiny charges and respond to distant fields. Everything moves at a pace that makes urgency irrelevant. Star formation may eventually occur, but it takes millions of years. There is no rush toward creation. If the idea of long, open waiting settles in now, that feeling aligns well with these environments. Plasma often smooths irregularities. When motion becomes uneven, plasma redistributes energy until extremes soften. Sharp boundaries blur, strong currents weaken slightly as they spread. This doesn't eliminate structure, it makes structure gentle. In cosmic plasmas, this smoothing helps systems endure. Nothing is pushed too far in one direction. If your inner experience feels like it's evening out fewer sharp thoughts, more gentle awareness that's a quiet echo of the same tendency. In the magnetospheres of planets, plasma circulates continuously. Particles follow curved paths guided by magnetic fields, looping from one region to another. Some complete many cycles before drifting away. Others remain for long periods, quietly participating in the flow. The motion is repetitive without being monotonous. It sustains itself without demand. If your listening feels repetitive in a comforting way, the sound remaining even as meaning drifts, that repetition is welcome here. Plasma does not require permanence to function. Patterns appear, persist for a time, and dissolve. New patterns form in their place. Nothing mourns what disappears. Nothing celebrates what emerges. The system remains responsive, always ready to adjust. This lack of attachment gives plasma its calm adaptability. If you find yourself letting go of earlier thoughts without effort, that ease reflects the same quality. In cosmic environments, plasma often acts as a moderator. It cushions interactions between energetic particles and calmer regions. It absorbs shocks, spreads disturbances, and prevents abrupt transitions. Without plasma, space would feel harsher. With it, change is softened. If you sense a cushioning effect, hear the words arriving gently. Without sharp edges, that sensation mirrors plasma's moderating role. Plasma can exist quietly alongside extreme forces, near powerful stars or dense objects. Conditions may sound intense, but plasma behavior remains measured. Fields guide motion, energy redistributes. Stability emerges from balance rather than control. Nothing needs to be forced into place. If you notice that even descriptions of vast or energetic systems feel calm rather than exciting, that calm is intentional and appropriate. In laboratories, plasma is often described as delicate. Small changes in conditions can alter its behavior. This sensitivity doesn't make plasma fragile, it makes it responsive. It listens closely to its environment, adjusting continuously. This responsiveness allows researchers to maintain stable plasmas by keeping conditions gentle. If your awareness feels sensitive now, noticing sound without effort, that sensitivity aligns with plasma's nature. Plasma often blurs distinctions between individual and collective. Single particles matter, but not alone. Their behavior gains meaning through interaction. Together, they form patterns that no single particle controls. This collective motion is smooth and forgiving. Small disruptions don't matter much. The whole absorbs them easily. If your attention flickers now in and out, that flicker is easily absorbed by the flow here. In planetary atmospheres, plasma participates in daily rhythms. Ionization increases with sunlight and decreases with darkness. These changes happen gradually. There is no switch being flipped. just slow adjustment. The planet remains wrapped in a responsive, gently changing layer. If your sense of time feels softened, less tied to moments, that softness fits naturally with these cycles. Plasma does not rush toward equilibrium. It moves in that direction patiently, allowing motion to continue along the way. There is no urgency to arrive. There is no failure in lingering. The journey itself is the state. If your listening feels like it's moving without arriving anywhere, that is entirely in harmony with the subject. Across all these settings, plasma remains quietly present. It does not insist on clarity. It does not demand attention. It continues responding, redistributing, adapting, whether noticed or not. As these segments pass, you're free to stay with them, to drift away from them, or to sleep. Nothing is required of you. Plasma remains, softly active, patient, and calm, keeping quiet company either way. Plasma often feels like a conversation that never raises its voice. There is constant exchange of energy, of motion, of influence, but it happens quietly. Fields shift, particles respond, waves pass through and dissolve. Nothing insists on being the center. Nothing demands to be resolved. In many regions of space, plasma exists in this low, steady dialogue, shaping its surroundings without interruption. If you notice your own thoughts drifting in and out now, that drifting belongs here. Plasma is accustomed to partial presence. In the long arcs of auroral light, plasma reveals one of its gentler expressions. Charged particles follow magnetic paths toward a planet's poles, spiraling slowly as they descend. As they interact with the upper atmosphere, light is released not in flashes, but in curtains that move as if they are breathing. The motion is unhurried. The colors shift gradually. Nothing needs to culminate. People often watch these displays in silence, letting them pass without explanation. If the image forms faintly for you, or not at all, either way is enough. The plasma continues its quiet descent regardless. Plasma does not require density to maintain structure. Even when particles are spread far apart, their shared fields provide cohesion. This allows plasma to form extended shapes that feel almost architectural long filaments, broad sheets, looping arcs. These structures are not rigid. They flex and adjust continuously, changing just enough to remain stable. In cosmic environments, such shapes can persist for astonishing lengths of time. If your awareness feels lightly held rather than focused, that lightness reflects the nature of these structures. In stellar atmospheres, plasma moves upward and outward in slow circulation. Heat rises, particles drift. Energy is carried gently away from the surface. This process does not hurry. It repeats endlessly, forming a steady pattern of motion that keeps the star balanced. Even dramatic-sounding events, when described closely, unfold according to these same gentle tendencies. Plasma responds to imbalance by spreading it out, not by amplifying it. If your own internal state feels balance without effort, that balance mirrors the physics involved. Plasma has a way of making time feel wide. Many of its processes unfold over spans that resist compression. A change may begin, continue for centuries, and still be considered gradual. From within the system, there is no sense of waiting, only ongoing adjustment. This can make plasma feel timeless, or at least unconcerned with time as humans experience it. If minutes feel indistinct, now stretching or dissolving, that experience aligns with plasma's pace. In the quiet between galaxies, plasma traces the faint scaffolding of the universe. Along vast filaments, ionized matter drifts slowly, guided by gravity and residual magnetic fields. These filaments are not highways. They are gentle alignments, where matter happens to flow because conditions allow it. The motion is subtle, almost hesitant, yet it continues for millions of years. If the idea feels too large to grasp, it can remain abstract. Plasma does not require scale to be understood. Plasma often acts as a buffer, standing between extremes, between hot and cold, between dense and diffuse, between energetic particles and calm regions. It absorbs differences and spreads them out, making transitions smoother. This buffering role is not deliberate. It emerges naturally from how charged particles interact. If you sense a kind of emotional cushioning now, thoughts arriving gently, without impact, that sensation echoes plasma's moderating presence. In laboratory settings, plasma can appear almost shy. Low-temperature plasmas glow faintly, contained by fields, hovering without contact. They respond instantly to small changes, yet remain calm when conditions are steady. Researchers often speak of tuning plasma rather than controlling it, because it responds best to subtle adjustment. Force is rarely effective. Gentleness works better. If your awareness feels sensitive to small shifts in tone, in pacing, that sensitivity aligns with how plasma behaves under observation. Plasma rarely moves in straight lines. Magnetic fields curve paths into spirals and loops. This curved motion spreads energy over time, preventing sharp impacts. Particles return near where they began, then drift slightly, then return again. Progress, if it happens, is slow and indirect. Nothing rushes forward. If your thoughts seem to circle rather than advance, revisiting familiar calm, that circling belongs here. In planetary environments, plasma participates in rhythms that repeat quietly. Daily cycles of light and darkness, longer cycles of solar activity, even slower shifts tied to seasons or orbital changes. Plasma responds to all of these, adjusting its density and motion gradually. There are no sudden switches, just steady modulation. If your sense of rhythm feels gentle, now rising and falling without demand, that rhythm mirrors plasma's own adjustments. Plasma does not store excess. When energy builds up, plasma finds ways to distribute it. Waves form, particles drift, fields rearrange, the system returns to a more even state. This tendency prevents runaway behavior in many cosmic settings. Nothing is allowed to become too sharp for too long. If your internal experience feels like it's smoothing itself out, fewer spikes of thought, that smoothing is not accidental. In the presence of radiation, plasma often enters a quiet exchange. Photons energize particles. Particles emit photons in return. The balance holds. Neither side dominates. This exchange can continue indefinitely, forming a steady glow or remaining invisible depending on conditions. There is no urgency to complete the exchange. It simply persists. If your listening feels like a gentle back and forth between sound and silence, that exchange fits naturally here. Plasma is often described statistically because individual details matter less than the collective behavior. This makes it forgiving. Small deviations don't disrupt the whole. The system absorbs them easily. If you miss a sentence, or forget where a thought began, nothing essential is lost. The experience does not depend on continuity. Plasma itself thrives without needing every part to be accounted for. In many cosmic settings, plasma forms halos around objects rather than clinging to them. These halos are loose, dynamic, and responsive. They expand and contract gently. They adjust to changes in environment without attachment. Nothing is held too tightly. If you feel a sense of spaciousness now, as though awareness is lightly surrounding rather than gripping, that spaciousness resonates with plasma's way of occupying space. Plasma does not conclude. Its processes overlap, repeat, and fade without finality. There is no moment when it is finished. It remains responsive as long as conditions allow. This makes it especially compatible with drifting attention. You can enter this flow at any point, leave it at any point, and nothing essential changes. If you feel yourself drifting now toward rest, toward sleep, or simply toward less effort, that drifting is entirely welcome. Plasma continues quietly either way, softly active, patient, and calm, keeping gentle company without asking for anything in return. Plasma often behaves as though it is always in the middle of something, never at the beginning and never at the end. It exists during transitions, during movement, during adjustment. When energy enters a system, plasma forms. When energy leaves, plasma fades. But there is rarely a clear moment where one can point and say it has started or stopped. It simply appears when conditions allow and remains for as long as they do. This gives plasma a quality of continuity that doesn't depend on memory. It doesn't care what came before. It responds only to what is present now. If you find that you don't quite remember what was said a moment ago, that lack of continuity fits gently alongside this way of being. In many cosmic environments, plasma drifts under the combined influence of gravity and magnetism. Gravity pulls matter inward. Magnetic fields guide charged particles along curved paths. The result is motion that feels guided but unforced. Plasma doesn't fall straight down or fly straight outward. It follows arcs, spirals, and slow loops. These paths allow energy to move without concentrating too sharply. They allow motion without collision. If your own attention feels like it's following a curved path now, not rushing forward, not stopping that movement echoes the same gentle guidance. Plasma often exists in balance with its surroundings, even when that balance is imperfect. Temperatures may vary, densities may fluctuate, fields may shift, but the system as a whole remains stable enough to persist. Small changes are absorbed rather than amplified. This capacity for tolerance makes plasma systems resilient. They don't need to be finely tuned to survive. They simply adjust as needed. If your listening feels forgiving, now able to drift without losing the thread that forgiveness mirrors plasma's tolerance for variation. In stellar winds, plasma flows outward continuously, carrying mass and energy away from stars. The flow is steady rather than explosive. Particles leave the star at modest speeds, guided by pressure and fields. As they travel, they thin out and cool, merging gradually with surrounding space. There is no sudden separation. The star does not end where the wind begins. The boundary is wide and gentle. If you sense that boundaries feel soft here between ideas, between moments, that softness is well aligned with this process. Plasma can also linger in regions where motion is minimal. In some areas, forces balance so precisely that large-scale movement nearly stops. Particles still move individually, but their motions cancel out. From a distance, the plasma appears calm, almost still. This quiet persistence can last for long periods. Nothing compels change, nothing demands resolution. If your mind feels quiet here, not focused, not distracted, that quiet is not emptiness. It is active in a subtle way, just like plasma at rest. Plasma often participates in cycles that repeat without clear markers. Energy enters, energy spreads, energy leaves. The same sequence occurs again and again, but never in exactly the same way. These cycles do not build toward improvement or decline. They simply continue. In planetary environments, plasma responds to daily and seasonal rhythms without effort. It adjusts as light comes and goes. If your sense of time feels less defined now, moments blending together, that blending resonates with these repeating, unmarked cycles. In the vast regions between galaxies, plasma exists at densities so low they challenge intuition. Particles may travel for years without interacting directly, and yet fields still connect them, waves still pass through. The plasma remains a collective, even when its members are far apart. This combination of distance and connection gives cosmic plasma a quiet spaciousness. Nothing crowds, nothing isolates completely. If your awareness feels spacious, now open, with room to drift, that spaciousness belongs here. Plasma often redistributes imbalance rather than correcting it. When one region becomes hotter or denser, plasma allows energy and particles to move outward. The difference softens over time. There is no snap back to uniformity, just gradual easing. This behavior prevents extremes from dominating. It keeps systems from tipping too far. If your internal experience feels like it's smoothing out, less sharp, less tense, that smoothing reflects plasma's natural response to imbalance. In magnetized environments, plasma motion tends to be repetitive but not monotonous. Particles trace loops that are similar but never identical. Small variations accumulate slowly, allowing gradual change without disruption. This gives plasma a sense of gentle novelty within stability. Things change, but not abruptly. Patterns evolve without breaking. If your thoughts return to familiar calm again and again, with slight variations each time, that repetition is not a failure of attention. It's a form of settling. Plasma does not store intention. It doesn't anticipate what will happen next. Its behavior is determined moment by fields, forces, and conditions. This lack of foresight makes plasma adaptable without effort. It does not plan. It responds. If your listening feels present, focused now, not thinking ahead, not reviewing what past, that presence aligns naturally with plasma's way of existing. In many descriptions, plasma is treated as a fluid because its collective motion matters more than individual paths. This fluid-like behavior allows scientists to describe it in broad terms, but for you, it can simply mean that plasma flows rather than jumps. It bends rather than breaks. It spreads rather than piles up. If the words you're hearing feel like they're flowing past rather than landing sharply, that flow is intentional and kind. Plasma often occupies the role of mediator, between radiation and matter, between energy and space, between motion and rest. It receives influence and passes it on gently. Nothing stays concentrated for long. Nothing is lost abruptly. This mediating role gives plasma a quiet steadiness. If you sense that this steady presence is simply accompanying you now, without asking anything, that is exactly how plasma tends to be. In cosmic time, plasma has been present since the universe's earliest moments. It filled everything when matter was hot and dense. As the universe expanded and cooled, plasma thinned, recombined, and reappeared in new places. It has never fully gone away. It simply changes form as conditions change. If the idea of continuity without permanence feels soothing, that feeling is well grounded in reality. Plasma does not need to be dramatic to be important. Much of what it does happens quietly, invisibly, and over long spans of time. It supports stars, it shapes space, it carries energy gently across vast distances, and it does all of this without urgency. If your attention fades in and out now, nothing essential is lost. Plasma continues its quiet work whether observed closely, loosely, or not at all. As these segments pass, there is no expectation that they form a coherent picture. They can remain impressions, fragments, soft ideas. Plasma itself does not insist on being fully understood. It exists comfortably alongside partial awareness. You're free to listen, to drift, or to rest. Nothing is required of you. Plasma remains calmly present either way, moving gently through space and time, keeping quiet company without ever asking to be held. Plasma often carries a sense of continuity that doesn't rely on beginnings. It doesn't wait to be activated. It doesn't prepare itself to appear. When conditions align, enough energy, enough freedom, plasma is simply there. In the universe, This happens so often that plasma feels less like an event and more like a background state. Matter loosens its bonds, charges respond, and a new kind of motion emerges without ceremony. If this feels unremarkable as you hear it, that's appropriate. Plasma is not rare. It is ordinary on a cosmic scale, and if your attention drifts here, noticing the sound rather than the meaning, that drifting fits easily alongside something so quietly common. In many plasma systems, motion is guided rather than pushed. Charged particles respond to electric and magnetic fields that already exist, following paths laid out long before they arrive. This creates movement that feels inevitable, but not forced. Particles spiral, curve, and loop without urgency. They don't rush toward destinations. They move because the environment invites movement. In space, these paths can be long and patient. Repeating gently. If your thoughts feel guided rather than directed, now wandering along familiar routes, that sensation mirrors the same principle. Plasma often allows different kinds of motion to coexist without conflict. Fast particles move alongside slower ones. Small fluctuations ride atop large. Steady flows. Neither cancels the other out. The system absorbs both, maintaining coherence without rigidity. This layered motion is common in astrophysical plasmas, where nothing needs to dominate. Everything has room to exist. If your awareness feels layered now, part listening, part resting, that layering is welcome here. In regions where plasma density is very low, interactions become subtle. Particles may travel vast distances before encountering another. Yet even in this sparsity, fields maintain gentle connections. Influence spreads without contact, soft and diffuse. The plasma remains collective, even when its parts are far apart. This creates an environment that feels spacious rather than empty. If your mind feels spacious, now open. Not focused, that openness belongs naturally with this kind of plasma. Plasma does not hurry towards stillness. When energy fades, motion slows, but it rarely stops entirely. Residual charge keeps particles responsive. Small oscillations persist. Gentle drifts continue. The system quiets without becoming inert. This lingering activity has no goal. It is simply what remains. If your listening settles into a calm without sharp edges, that settling reflects plasma's way of quieting. Plasma often blurs the distinction between structure and flow. Patterns form, persist, and dissolve without announcement. Filaments stretch, thin, and fade. Loops brighten slightly, then dim. Nothing locks into place permanently. Nothing collapses abruptly. Change happens within continuity. If the ideas you're hearing feel less like steps and more like a gentle wash, that softness is intentional. In planetary environments, plasma participates in slow, repeating circuits. Charged particles travel along magnetic field lines, looping from one region to another. Some remain for long periods, circulating quietly. Others drift away gradually. The motion is steady and forgiving. No particle is required to stay. No exit is abrupt. If your attention feels free to come and go now, that freedom echoes plasma's open circulation. Plasma can exist invisibly, shaping its surroundings without display. Many plasmas emit little light. They are known through subtle effects: a bent signal, a slowed particle, a shifted field. This invisibility does not make them weak, it makes them quiet. If the words feel like they're becoming background sound, that quiet presence is exactly the right tone. Plasma does not accumulate tension. When differences arise, it spreads them out. Energy redistributes. Gradients soften. Nothing builds endlessly. This tendency protects large systems from instability. It allows motion without escalation. If you feel a sense of easing now, thoughts smoothing, edges softening that easing is grounded in real physical behavior. In cosmic timescales, plasma is patient beyond measure. Processes unfold over millions or billions of years without urgency. From within the system, there is no waiting, only ongoing adjustment. Time stretches wide and gentle. If your sense of time feels loose now, moments blending, that looseness aligns with plasma's pace. Plasma does not need clarity to function. Its behavior emerges from many small interactions, none of which need to be tracked individually. This makes plasma forgiving of imprecision. Small variations do not disrupt the whole. If you miss a phrase or forget a sentence, nothing important is lost. The experience does not depend on precision. Plasma often occupies edges between hot and cold, dense and thin, active and quiet. These edges are wide, gradual zones rather than sharp lines. Properties change slowly across space. Nothing insists on a boundary. If your awareness feels like it's resting in an in-between place, not fully alert, not fully asleep, that is a natural home here. Plasma's presence in the universe is steady enough that astronomers treat it as expected. Wherever energy and matter coexist, plasma is likely present. It does not require special circumstances. It appears naturally and remains quietly. If this feels like background knowledge rather than something to hold on to, that's exactly how plasma tends to be: supportive, pervasive, uninsistent. Plasma does not aim toward completion. Its processes overlap and repeat without conclusion. There is no final state waiting ahead, only continued responsiveness. If your listening feels like it's moving without arriving anywhere, that movement is in harmony with the subject. As these segments drift past, there is nothing you need to gather or remember. They don't build toward a result. They don't require continuity. Each moment stands comfortably on its own. You're free to listen closely, loosely, or to let the sound carry you elsewhere. Plasma continues quietly, either way gently active, patient and calm, keeping soft company without ever asking for your attention. Plasma often feels like something that is always already happening. It doesn't need an introduction. It doesn't need to announce itself. Wherever conditions allow charged particles to move freely, plasma is simply there, behaving quietly. In the universe, this means plasma is present in places that never draw attention: thin regions, background regions, spaces between more obvious things. It participates without becoming the focus. If your awareness feels similarly unfocused, now present but not fixed, that resemblance is gentle and fitting. In many plasma environments, motion is smooth enough to feel almost continuous. Rather than particles bouncing sharply from one place to another, their paths curve and flow. Magnetic fields guide them into spirals. Electric fields nudge them gently along. This produces motion that has no clear start or stop. Movement becomes a steady condition rather than an event. If your thoughts feel like they're moving without direction now, drifting rather than traveling, that kind of motion belongs here. Plasma often carries energy in ways that don't feel energetic. Waves pass through, transferring motion without relocating matter very far. Particles oscillate gently, sharing energy back and forth. Nothing piles up, nothing empties out completely. This balance allows plasma systems to remain active without strain. In space, such processes can continue for long periods without noticeable change. If listening feels effortless now, no effort to follow, no effort to disengage, that ease mirrors plasma's way of carrying energy. In regions where plasma density is higher, collective behavior becomes more noticeable. Particles move together, responding to shared fields. Patterns form that belong to the whole rather than to any one part. These patterns may drift slowly, change shape, or fade, but they do so gently. Nothing breaks suddenly. Nothing snaps into place. If your experience feels collective rather than individual, awareness spreading rather than narrowing, that widening reflects the same principle. Plasma does not require equilibrium to be calm. It can exist far from perfect balance and still behave gently. Small imbalances lead to slow adjustments. Fields realign, particles redistribute. The system evolves without urgency. This tolerance for imperfection makes plasma resilient. It doesn't need exact conditions to continue. If your state feels slightly uneven now, a mix of alertness and rest, that unevenness is not a problem here. In cosmic environments, plasma often fills large volumes without forming solid structures. It occupies space lightly, without weight or pressure in the usual sense. Gravity may hold it loosely, fields may shape it gently, but plasma does not press against boundaries. It spreads out, adapting to what surrounds it. If your awareness feels expansive, now less contained, that expansion aligns naturally with plasma's presence. Plasma has a way of making transitions feel soft, between states of matter, between regions of space, between phases of activity. Ionization increases gradually, recombination unfolds slowly. There is rarely a sharp dividing line. If the words you're hearing blend together now, rather than forming clear steps, that blending is not accidental. It reflects how plasma moves between conditions. In planetary environments, plasma often circulates endlessly without destination. Particles loop along magnetic paths, returning near where they began. Over time, small drifts occur, but the overall motion repeats. This repetition is not wasteful. It sustains balance. It maintains structure. If your listening feels repetitive in a comforting way, sound continuing without progress, that repetition is welcome here. Plasma also tends to distribute responsibility across many particles. No single particle controls the behavior of the whole. Instead, collective tendencies emerge from countless small interactions. This makes plasma forgiving. Small disturbances are absorbed easily. The system continues without disruption. If your attention flickers now in and out, that flicker is easily absorbed by the flow here. In space, plasma often carries faint traces of past events. A burst of energy may leave behind waves that slowly fade. A disturbance may alter motion slightly before dissolving. Nothing is preserved sharply. Nothing is erased abruptly. History softens into background motion. If earlier thoughts feel distant or indistinct now, that soft fading mirrors plasma's way of letting the past dissolve. Plasma can exist alongside extremes without becoming extreme itself. Near intense radiation or strong gravity, plasma responds by redistributing energy, not amplifying it. Fields guide motion, waves spread influence. The system remains measured. If descriptions of vast or powerful environments feel calm rather than exciting, that calm reflects the real behavior of plasma under those conditions. In laboratory settings, plasma often responds best to gentleness. Subtle adjustments maintain stability better than forceful ones. Small changes in fields or energy lead to smooth transitions. Plasma listens closely to its environment. It does not tolerate being pushed abruptly, but it adapts easily when changes are slow. If your awareness feels sensitive, now responsive to tone rather than content, that sensitivity fits naturally here. Plasma rarely insists on clarity. Its behavior is often described statistically because individual details matter less than overall trends. This allows plasma to remain understandable without being fully specified. Precision is helpful, but not required for existence. If parts of what you hear slip past without forming meaning, nothing essential is lost. Plasma often fills the role of quiet infrastructure. It supports stars, shapes space, carries energy, and moderates interactions. Yet it does so without drawing attention. It is present in the background, enabling rather than starring. If this feels like background listening sound accompanying rest, that role is intentional. Plasma does not need an ending. Its processes overlap and repeat. They fade and reappear under new conditions. There is no final state toward which it moves, only continued responsiveness. If your listening feels like it's continuing without aiming anywhere, that aimlessness is compatible here. As these segments continue, there is no expectation that they accumulate into understanding. They can remain impressions, textures, gentle statements. Plasma itself does not require comprehension to function. You are free to remain awake, to drift, or to sleep. Nothing is asked of you. Plasma continues quietly, either way, softly active, patient, and calm, keeping steady company without ever asking to be held in attention. Plasma often gives the impression that it is content simply to be present. It does not hurry toward outcomes. It does not resist what surrounds it. It responds, adjusts, and continues. In many places in the universe, plasma exists in a kind of long pause, active, but unstrained. Particles move, fields shift, waves pass through, yet nothing feels like it needs to resolve. If your own state feels paused in this way, awake but not alert, aware but not focused, that state belongs comfortably alongside plasma's way of existing. In the spaces where light has already passed and nothing new has yet arrived, plasma remains quietly attentive. It carries faint electric currents, maintains gentle magnetic structures, and allows energy to drift through without holding on to it. Nothing accumulates for long. Nothing vanishes abruptly. Change happens, but it spreads thinly. If the sound of these words feels more present than their meaning now, that subtle shift mirrors how plasma carries influence without emphasis. Plasma often moves in ways that make straight lines rare. Charge particles spiral, curve, and loop as they respond to magnetic fields. These curved paths soften motion. They prevent collisions from being direct or sudden. Energy is shared gradually rather than delivered all at once. This is one reason plasma systems can remain stable, even when conditions are energetic. If your thoughts curve gently away from the words, now looping rather than advancing, that motion fits naturally here. In the long environments between stars, plasma creates a kind of quiet continuity. It connects regions without pulling them together. It allows influence without intrusion. Waves travel slowly, weakening as they go. By the time they arrive, they feel like part of the background. Nothing interrupts. If your awareness feels continuous rather than segmented moments blending softly, that continuity resonates with plasma's role in space. Plasma does not depend on being observed to maintain its patterns. Currents flow whether or not they are measured. Fields persist whether or not they are mapped. Waves rise and fade whether or not they are noticed. This independence gives plasma a calm confidence. It does not need confirmation. If you find yourself slipping in and out of attention now, that independence is mirrored here. Nothing essential depends on your focus. In planetary systems, plasma often acts as a soft shield. Magnetic fields guide charged particles around planets, redirecting solar wind gently rather than blocking it sharply. The interaction is smooth. Energy is absorbed and spread out. Life below remains largely unaffected. Plasma takes on the role of quiet protection, working continuously without being felt. If there's a sense of being gently held now without effort, that feeling has a physical counterpart above the planet at every moment. Plasma also exists in environments where motion is so slow that it almost feels still. In these regions, forces balance closely, particles drift, but large-scale changes take a very long time. Nothing demands immediate response. This slow persistence can last for ages. If your inner experience feels still but not empty, a quiet awareness that stillness aligns well with plasma at near balance. Plasma rarely insists on order, yet order often emerges. Not rigid order, but soft organization. Flows align, currents stabilize, patterns repeat. This happens not because plasma seeks structure, but because simple interactions settle into workable arrangements. These arrangements are flexible enough to endure. If the repetition of tone or phrasing feels soothing rather than dull, that comfort reflects plasma's preference for gentle consistency. In cosmic settings, plasma often mediates between extremes of scale. Tiny particle motions combine to shape structures millions of kilometers wide. Large fields influence behavior at the smallest levels. Neither scale dominates. They coexist without tension. If your awareness feels layered, now part engaged, part drifting, that layered experience fits easily here. Plasma does not remember where it has been. Its behavior is shaped by present conditions alone. When those conditions change, old patterns dissolve without resistance. New ones form naturally. There is no sense of loss, only adjustment. If earlier parts of this experience feel distant or forgotten, that forgetting is not a flaw. It reflects plasma's own lack of attachment to the past. Plasma often carries energy away rather than holding it. This prevents build-up and allows systems to remain calm. Waves transport motion outward, particles spread out, fields rearrange. The result is moderation. Nothing becomes too intense for long. If your internal state feels like it's smoothing itself, edges softening, that easing mirrors plasma's natural response to excess. In some environments, plasma glows faintly, releasing light as a side effect of motion. The glow is steady, not flashing. It does not demand to be seen. It simply accompanies the ongoing exchange of energy. If the idea of gentle light feels present now, or if it fades before forming, either response is fine. Plasma does not insist on imagery. Plasma can exist alongside neutral matter without conflict. Ionized particles drift among atoms and molecules. Each responds to different influences. Together, they form environments that are quiet and complex at the same time. Nothing competes for control. Everything adjusts. If your listening feels like coexistence rather than focused sound sharing space with rest, that coexistence fits well here. Plasma often defines regions not by borders, but by gradual change. Density thins, temperature shifts, motion slows or redirects. There is no line to cross, only a zone to pass through. If your awareness feels like it's moving through a wide in-between space, neither fully here nor fully gone, that state is welcome. Plasma's presence in the universe is so consistent that it becomes easy to overlook. It fills space quietly, supporting processes without drawing attention. It is not rare, not dramatic, not demanding. It is simply there, adapting as needed. If these words now feel like background sound, something accompanying rest that role mirrors plasma's own place in reality, plasma does not aim toward completion. It continues responding as long as conditions allow. Its processes overlap, repeat, and soften. There is no final state waiting ahead. If your experience feels like it's continuing without aiming anywhere, drifting gently, that directionless motion is entirely compatible here. As these segments move on, there is no need to gather them or remember them. They are not steps. They are not lessons. They are simply true, gentle descriptions passing by. You're free to stay with them, to let them blur, or to sleep. Nothing depends on your attention. Plasma continues quietly, either way, patient, adaptive, and calm, keeping soft company without ever asking to be held. Plasma often gives the sense that it is comfortable with uncertainty. It does not require precise conditions to exist. It does not need everything to line up perfectly. As long as there is some freedom for charges to move, plasma adapts and continues. In the universe, this means plasma appears in places that are uneven, changing, and imperfect. It does not wait for stability before arriving. It becomes part of the process of change itself. If your own awareness feels slightly uncertain now, not fixed, not searching that uncertainty belongs here. Plasma lives well in states that are not fully defined. In the wide spaces where galaxies slowly drift, plasma provides a gentle continuity. It fills the regions between visible objects, shaping how matter moves without drawing attention to itself. Gravitational pulls stretch it. Magnetic fields guide it. The result is motion that is present but understated. Nothing moves quickly enough to feel urgent. Nothing stays still enough to feel final. If your sense of movement feels slow and ambient like a background current, that feeling mirrors plasma's role on these vast scales. Plasma often responds to change before change feels noticeable. A small shift in energy can ripple outward through fields long before anything dramatic occurs. These ripples are soft. They spread. They fade. They prepare the system gently for what comes next. This responsiveness does not feel alert or vigilant. It feels receptive. If your attention feels receptive, now open to sound without effort, that openness aligns naturally with how plasma behaves. In many plasma environments, balance is never exact, yet stability persists. Temperatures vary slightly, densities fluctuate, fields shift subtly, and still, the system continues without disruption. This tolerance allows plasma to remain calm even when conditions are uneven. It does not require perfection to function. If your own experience feels uneven, moments of clarity mixed with moments of drift, that unevenness is not a problem here. It reflects plasma's forgiving nature. Plasma often spreads influence rather than concentrating it. When energy enters one region, plasma allows it to move outward through waves and particle motion. Nothing is hoarded. Nothing overwhelms its surroundings. Over time, the energy becomes part of the background motion. This spreading prevents sharp contrast from lasting too long. If your internal experience feels like it's dispersing thoughts becoming softer and less distinct, that dispersal is in harmony with the subject. In stellar atmospheres, plasma exists in layers that are constantly adjusting. Heat rises, particles drift, energy moves outward, the layers shift gently, responding to ongoing conditions. No layer is fixed permanently. No adjustment is final. This layered responsiveness keeps the star stable without rigidity. If your awareness feels layered now, some part listening, some part resting, that layered state fits comfortably here. Plasma often exists without announcing its presence. It can be nearly invisible, detectable only through subtle effects. Signals bend slightly, particles change direction, fields behave differently than expected. These signs are quiet, easy to miss. Plasma does not insist on being noticed. If the words feel like they're fading into the background now, that quiet presence is appropriate. In planetary magnetospheres, plasma circulates continuously, forming large-scale patterns that repeat. Particles drift along magnetic field lines, looping from one region to another. Some remain trapped for long periods, others escape gradually. The motion is steady and forgiving. Nothing forces an exit. Nothing demands permanence. If your attention feels free to come and go, entering and leaving without effort, that freedom echoes plasma's open circulation. Plasma often softens boundaries rather than defining them. Where two regions meet, plasma creates a transition zone. Properties change slowly across space. Temperature, density, and motion blend. There is no sharp edge. If your experience feels like it's resting in an in-between state, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, that in-between quality is a natural home here. In cosmic time, plasma is patient beyond measure. Processes unfold over spans so long that beginnings and endings lose meaning. A change may start, continue for millions of years, and still be considered gradual. From within the system, there is no sense of delay, only ongoing adjustment. If your sense of time feels stretched or softened, now moments blending together, that experience aligns with plasma's pace. Plasma does not accumulate memory. It does not carry a record of its past states. Each moment is shaped by current conditions alone. When those conditions change, old patterns dissolve without resistance. New ones form naturally. If you forget parts of what you've heard, that forgetting is not a loss. It reflects plasma's own way of existing without attachment. Plasma often behaves collectively rather than individually. Single particles matter less than their interactions. Behavior emerges from many small influences acting together. This makes plasma systems forgiving. Small disturbances are absorbed easily. The whole continues without disruption. If your attention flickers now in and out, that flicker is absorbed gently by the flow here. In some environments, plasma glows softly, releasing light as a side effect of energy exchange. The glow is steady, not dramatic. It does not seek to impress. It simply accompanies ongoing motion. If an image of faint light appears briefly, or if it fades before forming, either response is welcome. Plasma does not insist on imagery. Plasma can exist alongside neutral matter without conflict. Ionized particles drift among atoms and molecules. Each responds to different influences. Together, they form environments that are quiet and complex at the same time. Nothing dominates. Everything adjusts. If your listening feels like coexistence sound sharing space with rest, that coexistence fits well here. Plasma often defines regions through gradual change rather than boundaries. Density thins, temperature shifts, motion redirects. There is no line to cross, only a zone to move through. If your awareness feels like it's passing gently through something rather than arriving anywhere, that motion is appropriate. Plasma's presence in the universe is steady and unremarkable. It fills space quietly, supporting processes without drawing attention. It is not rare. It is not demanding. It is simply there, adapting as needed. If these words feel like background sound, now something accompanying rest that role mirrors plasma's own place in reality. Plasma does not aim toward completion. Its processes overlap, repeat, and soften. There is no final state waiting ahead, only continued responsiveness. If your experience feels like it's continuing without direction, drifting gently, that directionless motion is entirely compatible here. As these segments pass, there's nothing you need to hold on to. They do not build toward a conclusion. They do not require memory. They are simply real, gentle descriptions moving along at their own pace. You're free to listen, to drift, or to sleep. Nothing is asked of you. Plasma continues quietly, either way, patient, adaptive, and calm, keeping soft company without ever asking to be remembered. Plasma often feels like it belongs to the quiet spaces between actions. It is active without feeling busy. Particles move, fields respond, waves pass through, yet nothing feels like it is pushing toward a result. In many cosmic environments, plasma remains in this steady state for immense spans of time. There is no signal to begin and no cue to end. It simply continues as long as conditions allow. If your own awareness feels suspended here, not starting anything, not finishing anything, that suspension is a natural companion to plasma's way of existing. In the regions where stars slowly age, plasma adjusts without drama. As a star changes, the surrounding plasma responds by shifting density, motion, and temperature gradually. No sudden rearrangement is needed. The system adapts quietly, distributing energy and matter without urgency. This gradual responsiveness allows stars to evolve over billions of years without interruption. If the words you're hearing feel like they're arriving slowly, without sharp edges, that gentleness reflects the pace of these processes. Plasma often behaves as though it is more interested in balance than in movement. When something becomes uneven, plasma responds by easing the difference. Energy spreads, particles drift, fields adjust. Nothing snaps back into place. The system settles gradually into a new state that feels workable rather than perfect. If your internal experience feels like it's finding a comfortable middle, neither alert nor asleep, that middle ground is welcome here. In many places, plasma carries motion without carrying objects. Waves pass through, transporting energy while particles remain mostly where they are. This allows change to occur without displacement. In the sun's atmosphere, such waves carry energy upward gently, helping maintain balance. The motion is real, but it does not feel disruptive. If you notice movement in your awareness without a sense of going anywhere, that subtle motion mirrors this behavior. Plasma often allows large systems to remain connected without being tightly bound. Through fields and waves, distant regions influence one another slowly. This influence is diffuse, not concentrated. By the time it arrives, it feels like part of the background. Nothing interrupts, nothing demands response. If your thoughts feel loosely connected, now drifting but not lost, that loose connection fits naturally here. In the upper reaches of planetary atmospheres, plasma forms layers that respond gently to sunlight. As the sun rises, ionization increases slowly. As it sets, recombination follows just as gradually. There is no switch being flipped, only steady adjustment. The planet remains wrapped in a responsive layer that changes without calling attention to itself. If your sense of time feels softened, moments blending, that softening reflects these daily rhythms. Plasma does not cling to structures. Around stars and planets, it forms envelopes and halos held loosely by gravity and fields. These envelopes expand and contract slightly, responding to changing conditions. Nothing is held too tightly, nothing is released abruptly. If your awareness feels lightly held now present but unconfined, that feeling resonates with plasma's loose embrace. In interstellar space, plasma often exists at densities so low that interactions are rare. Particles travel vast distances without encountering one another directly, yet fields maintain a gentle coherence. The plasma remains a collective even in its sparsity. This combination of openness and connection gives cosmic plasma a spacious quality. If your awareness feels spacious, now open, with room to drift, that openness belongs comfortably here. Plasma tends to smooth sharp differences rather than enforce uniformity. When extremes arise, plasma allows energy and particles to redistribute gradually. The difference softens over time. Nothing is erased. Nothing dominates. This tendency toward moderation helps large systems remain calm. If your internal experience feels like it's easing sharp thoughts, softening that easing echoes plasma's natural response. In magnetized environments, plasma motion often repeats in familiar loops. Particles spiral along field lines, returning near where they began. Over time, small drifts occur, but the overall pattern persists. This repetition does not aim toward progress, it maintains balance. If your listening feels repetitive in a soothing way, sound continuing even as meaning drifts, that repetition is a form of settling. Plasma rarely insists on visibility. Many plasmas emit little light, remaining detectable only through their influence. Signals bend, particles slow, fields behave differently. These effects are quiet and continuous. Plasma does not demand to be seen clearly. If the words feel like background sound now, that quiet presence is intentional and kind. In laboratory settings, plasma responds best to gentle conditions. Small changes lead to smooth adjustments. Forceful intervention often disrupts stability. This sensitivity makes plasma appear delicate, but it is actually adaptable. It listens closely to its environment and responds accordingly. If your awareness feels sensitive, now attuned to tone rather than content, that sensitivity fits naturally here, plasma often occupies edges rather than centers, between hot and cold regions, between dense and diffuse matter, between activity and rest. These edges are wide zones, not sharp boundaries. Properties change slowly across them. If your experience feels like it's resting in an in-between place, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, that place is a natural home for plasma. Plasma does not remember its past states. Its behavior is shaped by present conditions alone. When those conditions change, old patterns dissolve without resistance. New ones form without attachment. If you forget parts of what you've heard, nothing is lost. The experience does not depend on memory. In cosmic timescales, plasma is endlessly patient. Processes unfold over millions or billions of years without urgency. From within the system, there is no waiting, only ongoing adjustment. If your sense of time feels less defined now, moments stretching, that looseness aligns with plasma's pace. Plasma does not aim toward completion. Its processes overlap, repeat, and soften. There is no final state ahead, only continued responsiveness. If your listening feels like it's continuing without direction, drifting gently, that directionless motion is welcome here. As these segments pass, there is nothing you need to hold or remember. They do not build toward a conclusion. They are simply true, gentle descriptions moving along at their own pace. You're free to listen, to drift, or to sleep. Nothing is asked of you. Plasma continues quietly, either way, softly active, patient, and calm, keeping quiet company without ever asking to be held. Plasma often feels like it belongs to the idea of ongoing rather than to any specific moment. It doesn't arrive suddenly, and it doesn't leave with ceremony. When conditions allow charges to move freely, plasma is simply present, adjusting quietly to what surrounds it in much of the universe. This makes plasma less like an object and more like an atmosphere, something that exists around and between things. If your awareness feels similarly atmospheric now, not fixed on a point, but gently spread out, that state fits naturally here. In many plasma systems, motion is subtle enough that it only becomes noticeable over long periods. Particles drift a little, fields bend slightly, waves pass through and fade. At any given moment, almost nothing seems to be happening, and yet, over time, these small motions shape enormous structures. Galaxies evolve, stars remain stable, space itself is gently organized. If listening feels uneventful now, calm, without highlights. That uneventfulness reflects how plasma works most of the time. Plasma often carries energy in a way that avoids sharp contrasts. Instead of concentrating motion in one place, it spreads influence outward. Waves carry changes gently. Particles redistribute themselves slowly. Fields adjust to accommodate new conditions. The result is moderation rather than intensity. In cosmic environments, this spreading prevents systems from becoming too extreme. If your inner experience feels like it's evening out, no sharp thoughts, no strong pull, that sense of balance mirrors plasma's natural tendencies. In the quiet spaces around planets, plasma circulates endlessly along magnetic paths. Charged particles spiral and drift, looping from one region to another. Some remain for long periods, others leave gradually, without disruption. The circulation has no destination. It exists to maintain balance, not to arrive anywhere. If your attention feels free to loop, gently returning to the same calm again and again, that looping belongs comfortably here. Plasma does not require density to feel coherent. Even when particles are sparse, shared fields create connection. Influence travels without contact. Motion remains collective without crowding. This allows plasma to fill vast volumes of space lightly, without pressure. If your awareness feels light now present but unburdened, that lightness aligns with plasma's way of occupying space. In stellar environments, plasma often exists in slow circulation rather than direct flow. Heat rises, matter moves outward, energy spreads, but the motion is rarely straight or fast. It curves, loops, and returns, distributing energy evenly. This circulation allows stars to shine steadily for billions of years. Nothing needs to hurry. If your sense of pacing feels slow and forgiving words arriving without urgency, that pacing matches the physics involved. Plasma has a tendency to soften boundaries wherever it appears, between hot and cool regions, between dense and diffuse matter, between activity and rest, instead of sharp edges. Plasma forms transition zones where properties change gradually. These zones can be wide, quiet spaces of adjustment. If your experience feels like it's resting in an in-between state, neither fully alert nor fully asleep, that place is a natural home for plasma. Plasma often exists invisibly, shaping its environment without display. Many plasmas emit little or no light. They are known through subtle effects: a bent signal, a shifted field, a slowed particle. This invisibility does not reduce their importance. It simply keeps them quiet. If these words feel like background sound, now something accompanying rest, rather than demanding attention, that role mirrors plasma's quiet presence in the universe. In cosmic time, plasma is remarkably patient. Processes unfold over millions or billions of years without urgency. From within the system, there is no sense of delay, only continuous adjustment. Change happens, but it happens slowly enough to feel almost timeless. If your sense of time feels loose now, moments blending softly, that looseness aligns with plasma's pace. Plasma does not store tension. When energy builds, plasma finds ways to distribute it. Waves form, particles drift, fields rearrange. The system returns to a gentler state without effort. This tendency toward easing prevents runaway behavior. If your internal experience feels like it's smoothing itself out, edges softening, that easing is grounded in real physical behavior. In laboratory settings, plasma responds best to subtlety. Small adjustments maintain stability better than forceful ones. Gentle changes allow plasma to adapt without disruption. This sensitivity does not make plasma fragile. It makes it responsive. If your awareness feels sensitive, now responsive to tone rather than detail, that sensitivity fits naturally here. Plasma often behaves collectively rather than individually. No single particle defines the whole. Behavior emerges from many small interactions acting together. This makes plasma forgiving of small disturbances. The system absorbs them easily. If your attention flickers now in and out, that flicker is absorbed gently by the flow here. In the space between galaxies, plasma traces faint structures that guide matter gently. These filaments are not rigid frameworks. They are soft alignments where matter drifts because conditions allow it. The motion is slow and understated. If the idea feels abstract or distant, it can remain that way. Plasma does not require clear imagery to be real. Plasma does not remember where it has been. Its behavior depends on present conditions alone. When those conditions change, old patterns dissolve without resistance. New ones form naturally. If earlier parts of this experience feel distant or forgotten, that forgetting is not a loss. It reflects plasma's own lack of attachment to the past. Plasma often exists alongside neutral matter without conflict. Ionized particles drift among atoms and molecules. Each responds to different influences. Together, they form environments that are quiet and complex at the same time. Nothing competes for control. Everything adjusts. If your listening feels like coexistence, sound sharing space with rest, that coexistence fits well here. Plasma does not aim toward completion. Its processes overlap, repeat, and soften. There is no final state waiting ahead, only continued responsiveness. If your listening feels like it's continuing without direction, drifting gently, that directionless motion is entirely compatible here. As these segments move along, there is no need to collect them or remember them. They do not build toward a conclusion. They are simply true, gentle descriptions passing by at their own pace. You are free to listen closely, loosely, or to sleep. Nothing is required of you. Plasma continues quietly, either way, softly active, patient, and calm, keeping quiet company without ever asking to be held. As this long, quiet stream begins to soften, there's nothing that needs to be gathered up or carried forward. The ideas don't need to resolve. They don't need to line up or make sense together. They can simply settle wherever they happen to land, or pass by without landing at all. Plasma continues, whether we speak about it or not. It drifts through space, responds gently to fields, spreads energy, softens boundaries, and remains present without asking to be noticed. That has been true while you were listening closely, and it remains true if your attention has wandered, or if parts of this have faded entirely. If you're feeling sleepy now, you're welcome to let that happen. You don't need to stay with the words. You don't need to follow the ideas to the end. Sleep is allowed here, and nothing is missed by taking it. And if you're still awake, still drifting gently in and out, that's welcome too. There's no pressure to change your state. You can remain exactly as you are, resting in this quiet space where nothing is required. Plasma doesn't hurry, and neither do you need to. It doesn't hold on, and you don't need to either. It adjusts moment by moment, responding to what is present, letting everything else fall away. As the sound of this voice becomes less important, and the silence between words grows wider, you can allow yourself to settle into whatever comes next: sleep, rest, or simple quiet awareness. Thank you for spending this time here, in a gentle exploration that didn't ask for effort. Whether you remember any of it or none of it, that's perfectly fine. For now, you're free to rest, you're free to drift, you're free to stay awake. Good night and take care.